What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in One Piece as DIDDY Kong, the Chaos Emperor, Part 2. If you enjoy this type of content, please rizz the like button with your overwhelming Conqueror's Haki. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Remember to check out the original story linked in the description. Let's turn the OP world upside down without further ado. For my first act as captain of the Frenzy Pirates, I shall appoint you, Freya, as vice captain of the Frenzy Pirates, stated Diddy with a grin while pointing at Freya, causing her to release a huff of annoyance. Just know when I kill you and take over the spot as captain, I'll immediately disband this pirate group, remarked Freya while eyeing Diddy, who laughed in response. Hahaha, whatever you say, Freya the Beast Tamer, replied Diddy with laughter as he approached the helm while Freya clutched her fists in anger, wanting nothing more than to rip the beating heart out of his chest. Walking up the stairs, I arrive at the upper deck, where the helm is located. Approaching the helm, I signaled Freya to raise the anchor. While she was doing that, I was currently getting a feel for the wooden steering wheel, and I'll tell you what, it was much more comfortable than I had anticipated. It didn't even really feel like wood. Heh, I must give Freya props. She found a great shipwright. I just hope this thing can last until we find a proper ship, mused Diddy while carelessly spinning the wheel. When I got decently accustomed to the helm, I let it be and approached the left side of the ship as I began pulling the ropes to lower the sails. Once I finished dropping both sides of the sail, although it was slight, I could feel the ship moving. You have to turn the sail to catch the wind, remarked Freya blandly as she began shifting the direction of the sails until they were catching the wind, causing the boat to pick up speed quickly. TCH, I know, woman. I was just about to get to that part, said Diddy with a click of his tongue as he looked at the dock they had just left from. Well, you were too slow. Be faster next time, mocked Freya as she folded her arms and looked at the island that was slowly getting smaller by the minute. Heh, but you didn't say that to the beast you shadowinged, replied Diddy with a feral grin, his words filling Freya with wrath. How long do you want to play this game, Diddy? Exclaimed Freya angrily as her body started morphing into her monstrous form while she unleashed her killing intent. Hee hee, it seems like someone is finally deciding to get serious, said Diddy with a grin as he also unleashed his killing intent while brandishing his staff. As we dangerously eyed one another while the two of us also released our killing intent, although it looked like we were about to break out into a fierce battle at any moment, both of us knew it wasn't going to happen. Freya knew she couldn't beat me in battle, and she still hasn't reached her peak. So after provocatively staring at each other for a solid minute, we reeled in our killing intent and calmed down as we quietly looked at the island in the distance. You know, I couldn't care less about Karate Island, but as I look at it now, I can't help but reminisce about it. I created various memories in that place. Most of them I don't care about, but there are a few that I'm very fond of, said Diddy calmly with a slight smile while looking at the island as he stood beside Freya. I suppose I'm not too different. I was born on that island and knew nothing but that island, yet now for the first time I'm leaving it, after having brought it to ruins, added Freya as she also reminisced, and for the first time in 7 years, she displayed a smile of happiness. Just as I was about to turn around and man the helm, I suddenly stopped and widened my eyes as I remembered I had left an unfulfilled promise to myself. Looking back at the island, I quickly ran forward and jumped off the ship while propelling myself through the air as I headed toward the island once more. I'll be back in a couple of minutes, yelled Diddy to the confused Freya as he swiftly approached the island in merely a few seconds. Arriving back at the dock, I kept moving through the air while overlooking the desolate and ruined city beneath me that was filled with nothing but hundreds upon hundreds of corpses. Once I passed the city and entered the forest, I momentarily stopped when I arrived directly above a large clearing, the same clearing where I had fought that lemur and transformed for the first time. Now that I think about it, that lemur must have eaten a devil fruit. He smelled similar to Freya and that shoe. I guess that's good to know. It seems like any species is capable of eating a devil fruit. Though I wonder, could an inanimate object eat a devil fruit? Thought Diddy while standing above the clearing before shaking his head as he continued to propel himself through the air. Leaving the center area of the forest, I quickly entered the inner area, only to swiftly bypass it and arrive in the outer area while glancing at the waterhole before eventually nearing the beach where I used to stay. Within a matter of a few minutes, I managed to arrive at the other side of the island, though from what I know, this island is pretty tiny, so my achievement wasn't that impressive. Landing on the bench, I felt the soft and warm sand caress my feet as I approached my home, which seemed to have fallen apart over the years, though my hammock still looked to be in relatively good shape. However, what I had come here for wasn't to appraise my first home. Walking past my wrecked house, I approached a tree in the distance, a perfectly ordinary tree, yet that alone was why it stood out. I should have destroyed this tree years ago. Hee, don't think I've forgotten about you. I made myself a promise all those years ago, and I'm not the kind of person to ever go back on my words or promise," said Diddy with a savage expression as he stabbed his staff deep into the sand while getting into a horse stance. While in a horse stance, I placed my 2 arms before me, one above the other, as I pointed my fists toward the tree in front of me. Once I was ready, I used all 6 techniques, which I've come to learn are called the Rokushiki, after stumbling across the manual in one of the most prominent dojos. The instant I used all 6 Rokushiki techniques at once, I felt a tremendous amount of power form at the base of my feet before it began to make its way up through my body while increasing in strength. Once it arrived at my abdomen, instead of continuing to my head, I diverted its power to my arms, causing my arms to forcefully swell from the sheer amount of power they contained. "Rokugan!" yelled Diddy with a savage expression as he released all the accumulated power from his fists toward the tree. The power I released was so great that I was even pushed back a little, and if I hadn't firmly planted my tail against the ground to keep me steady, I might have fallen back. When the Rokugan was launched from my fists, an utterly massive and dense gust of wind smashed into the center of the tree, as it tore it to shreds instantly while continuing into the forest, destroying everything it came into contact with, leaving nothing but a path of destruction through the forest for as far as the eye could see. "Ha ha ha!" exclaimed Diddy as he chaotically laughed, admiring the sheer destruction his attack made. "Well, now that I've accomplished my promise, time to head back. I can't leave Freya for too long, or she'll chase after me," thought Diddy with a grin as he grabbed his staff and jumped into the sky while heading back toward the island's north side. While propelling myself through the sky, I looked down, appreciating the path of destruction I created, yet at the same time, curious about how far it went. It wasn't until I arrived toward the inner area did I finally spot the end of my destruction, which was quite shocking, since while the outer area is the smallest section of the forest, it's still large, at least half a kilometer. That is, without a doubt, my strongest attack to date. To think it blasted through numerous trees until finally arriving at the edge of the inner area before dissipating, mused Diddy with a smirk before speedily propelling himself through the air as he headed toward his ship. A few minutes later, I spotted the ship off in the distance, a few kilometers away from the island, shooting toward the boat. Just before I crashed into it, I hit the air again, instantly stopping my moment a few meters above the deck before landing on it softly. "What were you doing?" asked Freya curiously while sitting on a barrel in the corner. "Hee, nothing spectacular, just honoring a promise I made to myself a few years ago," replied Diddy as he leaned his staff against the wall while also sitting on a barrel, the two looking at the island in the distance until it eventually disappeared. "So Diddy, do you have any idea where to go?" questioned Freya as she looked out to sea. "No idea. Besides, don't you need a log pose to navigate?" replied Diddy, causing Freya to sigh in annoyance. "No, apparently, you haven't done any research, Captain," said Freya sarcastically, while Diddy merely laughed. "Normal compasses are fine, at least until you arrive in paradise. Then, we'll need a log pose to navigate unless you wish to stay forever lost," added Freya as she reached into her bra and revealed a compass before tossing it toward Diddy, who caught it with his tail. With the compass in hand, I reached into my pants pocket and grabbed a map of the South Blue, and after a couple of moments, I determined our next destination. "Batarilla, that's the next closest island, though we have to go east to get there," declared Diddy as he hopped off the barrel while tossing the compass back toward Freya, who also caught it with her tail that suddenly appeared. Walking up the stairs to the upper deck, I grabbed the helm and turned it toward the right until we began heading east before I straightened it out. "Batarilla, you're next on our destruction list," stated Diddy with a feral smirk while Freya once again sighed. "Freya, this is utterly boring. Why didn't you tell me sailing the seas would be so dull? We hadn't encountered a single ship in the past 3 days," yelled Diddy angrily from his lying position while eyeing Freya, who was currently operating the helm. "What do you want me to say, Diddy? South Blue is massive. Besides, we should reach Batarilla by tomorrow. You can release your boredom once we arrive," replied Freya with a twitch of her eye while glancing at Diddy lying in the middle of the deck. TCH, Batarilla isn't going to be that fun anyways. It's even smaller than Karate Island on the map, said Diddy in annoyance. And whose fault is that? Who's the one that decided to head to Batarilla in the first place, Captain? Remarked Freya in frustration along with emphasis, causing Diddy to huff in annoyance. Humph, whatever, I'm hungry, I'm going to hunt something, stated Diddy as he stood up and grabbed his staff beside him before jumping overboard into the sea. Submerging myself underwater, I used Jeppo as I powerfully kicked the water beneath my feet, causing me to propel myself through the water as if it didn't even exist. Funnily enough, Jeppo is meant to be used in the sky, which is obviously above water, but since water is a liquid, it's much easier to use the technique while underwater, even with the additional restriction from being underwater. While moving deeper into the sea, I spotted numerous aquatic life forms, such as fish, sharks, dolphins, whales, and whatever else you could possibly name. However, they were of course, much larger than their counterparts on Earth. There were a lot of options to choose from, but none of them interested me enough, so I continued diving even deeper into the sea, which resulted in my visibility lowering to the point where I was nearly in pitch blackness, though while it was a disadvantage, my other senses made up for my lack of sight. Now then, where are you, Sea Kings? Thought Diddy with a feral smile full of excitement as he searched through the ocean for prey. With the sheer size of Sea Kings, it didn't take long to find one, although since it was pretty dark down here, I couldn't properly make out its features, but its body shape resembled that of an eel or snake. Shortly after I spotted the Sea King, it also spotted me as it loudly roared, causing the surrounding water to tremble, before swiftly charging toward me, moving at speeds one wouldn't expect from creatures this big, though even in the face of such a monstrous beast, I wasn't the slightest bit perturbed. Hee hee, come on you beast, I'm very curious to know how Sea Kings taste, thought Diddy with an eager expression as he kicked off the water and approached the Sea King, easily outspeeding the beast. As we swiftly neared one another, the beast opened its massive jaws, intending to swallow me in one gulp, though such a thing was easily dodged as I kicked myself to the right of the beast just before it snapped its maws closed. Now on the right side of Sea King, just before its eye, which was at least 4 times my size, I brandished my staff before powerfully swinging it on top of its mouth, pushing the beast down several meters before it regained its bearings. TCH thought as much. None of my attacks will do much damage. The creature is just too damn big, thought Diddy in annoyance as he propelled himself through the water while attacking the Sea King's body all over. Putting the staff in front of me, I blocked the beast's tail swipe before counterattacking by slamming my staff onto its tail, pushing it back several meters. Yet, although that attack was relatively strong, I might as well be stabbing the Sea King with a needle, since it still looks rather lively even after injuring it numerous times. Annoying, I prefer using my staff to fight, but it's already been several minutes. I don't want to waste any more time fighting something so weak, mused Diddy with a frown as he holstered Nagar-sa onto his back. 72 Bien. Variation 54. Fishman Karate, thought Diddy as he got into his fighting stance while the beast quickly neared him. The Sea King used the same attack as before. He charged toward me with his maw wide open, attempting to devour me in one bite. Yet just like what previously happened, I propelled myself to the left, appearing before his eye. With my fist right beside my chest, I punched forward, utilizing Fishman Karate that I had mastered over the past 5 years. Samagawara Saiken, thought Diddy with a savage grin as he punched the side of the beast's head, though unlike before, where his attacks caused minimal damage, this time was different. His attack traveled throughout the beast's entire body. While smirking, I retracted my fist from the Sea King's body and glanced at his eyes, which had gone white as his body went limp, resulting in him slowly sinking. However, I wasn't going to let that happen. I had come down here for food after all. Appearing beneath the corpse, I lifted it up before propelling myself back to the surface, causing various aquatic life to flee in fear from the sight of a Sea King. Exiting the water, I jumped into the air while hauling about a massive beast, which forced me to use much more power in my kicks if I wanted to use Jeppo, though it wasn't anything I couldn't handle. Must have been fighting for a while. I don't even see our ship, mused Diddy while observing the ocean, only to see nothing but blue water as far as the eye could see. Although I couldn't spot my ship, it was fine. Freya's body emits a very potent and unique scent, something that would be nearly impossible for me to miss. Inhaling the air, I caught a whiff of Freya, causing me to smirk as I propelled myself through the air while following the scent's tail. Not even a minute later, I spotted my ship in the distance while my Jolly Roger swayed about in the wind. As I neared the boat, I slowly lowered myself onto the deck, causing the ship to sink a few inches before stabilizing. That's quite a haul. No wonder it took you so long," remarked Freya lightly as she looked up at Diddy and the massive Sea King that was even larger than their ship. "Hee hee, we're eating good tonight," said Diddy with a smile as he set the Sea King down on the deck and began butchering it with his sharp nails, something he's very proficient at. As I cut the Sea King into numerous slabs of meat roughly half my size, which took quite some time, I tossed the rest of the carcass overboard. Although there were still some things I could have harvested from the beast, what I had acquired was more than enough to satisfy Freya and I for 2 weeks. "You should know the stove isn't big enough to cook items of that proportions," said Freya calmly as she sat at the helm, though Diddy merely smirked. "Who said I was using the oven?" asked Diddy as he raised his arm, causing arcs of lightning to emerge from his body. "Now don't be surprised. As I said before, I've gotten much stronger in the past 5 years. Emitting electricity and mastering my fighting technique is just the tip of the iceberg. Besides, this shouldn't be that surprising. Lighting emits from my whole body whenever I transform, so it's nothing new. Grabbing a piece of meat roughly half my size, with the use of my lightning, I had it cook the meat, and rather quickly to boot, as in a matter of a few minutes, it released an irresistible smell." "Want one?" asked Diddy as he glanced at Freya while eating his cooked steak with one hand while cooking another slab of meat with his other hand. "No, I'm good. I think I'll just cook it like a normal person," replied Freya as she entered the underside of the ship while bringing along with her Sea King meat. "Suit yourself," said Diddy as he ignored her and continued eating until he was satisfied, which was quite a lot considering his size. While Diddy and Freya were sailing towards Batarilla, the reinforcements that Captain Shu called had arrived, and the one leading them was Rear Admiral Hina, a relatively powerful marine officer. Looking about the city, I saw nothing but corpses that littered the streets, filling me with disgust and anger at the monster that could commit such a massacre, and while deep in my thoughts, I saw a marine quickly running toward me. "Rear Admiral Hina, I've located Captain Shu among the numerous corpses," said a marine with eyes full of anger as he saluted before a woman with pink hair wearing a red suit, glasses, and a marine cape who was currently smoking a cigarette. "Lead Hina to him," ordered Hina with a sigh as she exhaled smoke while following behind the marine. Walking through the streets while stepping over corpse after corpse, the marine and I eventually arrived before a dried-up corpse that stood out among the rest. Squatting down, I turned the corpse over onto its back, allowing me to see his face properly. "Just like every other person, yet, why does he look happy?" mused Hina with a frown as she eyed Shu's dried-up corpse. "Load him onto the ship. As a marine officer, he deserves a proper burial," ordered Hina as she puffed out smoke while the marine saluted before heading back towards the ship. Just as I was about to explore the city, hoping to find something, I saw another marine running toward me, though this time, there was something in her hand. "Rear Admiral Hina, I found these 2 pictures at the destroyed outpost along with a note," stated the marine while saluting as she handed over 3 pieces of paper to Hina. "A mink and an incredibly beautiful woman," thought Hina with a frown as she eyed Diddy, who was baring his fangs while Freya was seductively licking her lips. I didn't know exactly what these pictures represented, but I had a feeling the note would clear my confusion, and it indeed did. "Hey, it's me, Diddy, the one who isn't a woman. I just want to let you know that I and Freya, the woman, are the ones responsible for this destruction and all the killing. By the time you're reading this, we've long since set sail. Our next destination is probably the closest island, whatever that is, so hopefully, I'll see you there or not. Just make sure to send someone powerful after me. I want an enjoyable battle before I kill them, after all. Sincerely, Diddy D. Kong." The marine reinforcements should have arrived at Karate Island by now. "Hee hee, I wonder what their reaction was," said Diddy with a viscous smirk while standing on the upper deck as he looked in the direction of Karate Island. "Because of your stupid note, now they know where to find us. Good job, Captain," remarked Freya with a frown, though Diddy merely laughed in response. "Haha, that's the whole point, Freya. It wouldn't be any fun otherwise," replied Diddy as he turned around and neared Freya, who was at the helm, sitting in the captain's seat. "Only you would call pissing off the Marines, killing hundreds of people, and destroying an island fun. I've always known you were a monster, but I didn't know you were also psychotic," stated Freya as she glanced at Diddy, who was laughing. "Anyways, enough about the Marines for now. Karate Island may have some connections with the WG, but that place was weak and unimportant. So most likely, even if they send some ships after us, it'll only consist of a bunch of weaklings. It'll take a few more destroyed islands before they start taking us somewhat seriously, though by then, I hope to already be in paradise, or at least near the Grand Line," said Diddy with a smirk while leaning against the captain's seat that Freya occupied. So, how much longer until we arrive at Batarilla? It should be close, added Diddy calmly as he folded his arms while looking out to sea, hoping to spot an island. I don't know exactly, but we are very close. Any minute now, its silhouette should be appearing in the distance, replied Freya while looking at the map of South Blue. If we're that close, maybe I should just go on ahead? It's not like this ship is necessarily moving fast or anything. I could get there faster even if I swam, muttered Diddy with a thoughtful expression, and just when he was about to jump into the air, Freya aggressively grabbed his tail. Don't even think about it, Diddy. If you go by yourself, you'll kill everyone on the island, leaving me with no one to feast on, said Freya with an intense frown as she tightened her grip, causing Diddy to grin in response. Oh, aren't I the captain, Freya? Why should I have to listen to the words of a vice captain, not to mention someone weaker than me? Questioned Diddy with a beastly grin as lightning arched around his tail, causing Freya's palm to emit smoke, though she didn't once flinch. TCH, can't you just wait a few minutes? Is that so difficult for you? Besides, the Batarilla is right there, asked Freya while eyeing Diddy, not even bothering about her burning palm as she used her other hand to point forward. Following Freya's finger, I looked in the direction of where she was pointing, and lo and behold, I spotted the silhouette of an island quite far off in the distance. Although I could just fly through the air while using Jeppo to get there quicker, it would only take a few more minutes to get there by ship. Humph, well, aren't you lucky? However, it won't always be the same. As I said before, I'm not waiting for anyone. If you can't keep up with me, you'll get left behind, said Diddy with a viscous grin while slightly baring his fangs as he forcefully swung his tail, escaping Freya's grip. I already know that, don't need to tell me twice. But if you were to go ahead, I would have followed, which means the ship would have been abandoned with no one steering it. Although we were quite close to the island, we are still out in the sea. I'd prefer if nothing happens to the ship. It was quite a tedious process to acquire, replied Freya lightly while blowing on her charred palm that was still emitting smoke. I wanted to give a rebuttal, but I couldn't really deny her words either. I'd also prefer if nothing happened to the ship, since while Freya and I can both fly, well, it's technically running for me, it would be pretty exhausting to do so, not to mention we would only be able to take rests on islands or in the ocean. Well, not for Freya, unless she wishes to drown. If waiting a few minutes can possibly prevent something bad from happening to the ship, I can wait a few minutes. Granted, it was a rather boring couple of minutes. Heh, I suppose this is what they call brains and brawn, muttered Diddy, though Freya merely scoffed. I wish you were nothing but brawn. It would be much easier to kill you if you were stupid. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. You're far smarter than you let on. Besides, I may be weaker than you, but I'm no pushover either. It's not like you'd be able to kill within a few attacks. It would take more than that to bring me down, declared Freya with a frown as she glanced at Diddy, who nodded in response. You're not wrong. A smart person wouldn't let their hand get burnt, said Diddy, though once again, Freya huffed at his remark. If I'd done that, you'd have flown to the island, replied Freya, causing Diddy to smirk while the two descended into silence as they approached the island. While nearing the island, I noticed a lighthouse on a small island beside the main island, though the lighthouse wasn't activated, causing me to raise an eyebrow, but I didn't have any knowledge of how lighthouses operate, so I thought nothing of it. However, not too far off from the coast, I spotted a marine outpost along with a couple of small battleships seemingly guarding the island. Heh, I didn't know Batarilla had a marine outpost. Isn't it just a normal island? Well, whatever. Seeing them patrolling the coast, they must have been anticipating our arrival. Hee, get ready, Freya. We are about to have a special welcoming party, declared Diddy with a feral grin as he unholstered the staff attached to his back, while Freya lustfully licked her lips with a hungry gaze. I should thank them. To think they would prepare a delicious feast for little ol' me. I'm honored, said Freya with a smirk as she eyed the three ships full of men with a hungry gaze. As we approached the island, it didn't take long for them to spot our ship as they stopped patrolling and started heading toward our location, seemingly trying to intercept us before we arrived at the island. When the first ship neared us, they began firing cannonballs at our ship. Thankfully, they had terrible aim, but the few that threatened to hit my ship, I would simply knock away with my staff. What a nice captain for allowing ladies to go first. I shall thank you later, Diddy, said Freya with a smirk while flying past Diddy with wings that sprouted from her back as she neared the marine ship. TCH, whatever, at least she'll cause the battleship to stop firing cannonballs, thought Diddy with a frown while ignoring Freya as he deflected cannonballs from hitting his ship. Thankfully, Freya's abilities were very potent against men, and not even a minute later, the battleship's barrage of cannonballs halted, causing me to smirk, and without an ounce of hesitation, I jumped into the sky and propelled myself through the air, intending to stop the other two ships before they get within range. While flying through the air, I passed by the first battleship where Freya was, and what I saw on the deck was a line of Marines, both male and very few women, willingly offering themselves to Freya as she sucked their vitality dry with a kiss, killing them in a matter of seconds. Yet even so, not a single person faltered from such a sight. Aren't succubi abilities supposed to weaken when used on a woman? That doesn't really seem to be the case here, thought Diddy with a raised eyebrow as he watched Freya passionately kiss a woman, sucking her vitality dry. Anyways, I didn't dwell on Freya's abilities for too long as I quickly passed the first battleship and neared the incoming two in the distance. They must have spotted me flying through the sky since they started using cannons and guns, hoping to knock me out of the sky. However, such attempts were useless. I didn't bother dodging the bullets as I simply hardened my body using one of the Rokushiki techniques, which is called Tekai. With my body now as hard as iron, the bullets that hit my body bounced off, causing me not an ounce of damage. The cannonballs, on the other hand, they were explosive, so taking them head-on wouldn't be the brightest idea, though I didn't need to since I simply deflected them using Naga-sa. Getting closer to the two battleships, I deflected a few more cannonballs before finally landing on one of the battleships. Noticing the stop of gunfire, I looked around, only to see the crowd of Marines that surrounded me holster their rifles as they unsheathed their swords with determined expressions. "We'll only say this once, surrender right now, Dash," said a righteous Marine officer as he stepped forward from the crowd of Marines, though he didn't manage to finish his speech. Surrender? I don't quite understand that word," stated Diddy with a vicious smirk while looking at the righteous Marine he had stabbed his arm through, clutching his still-beating heart with his hand. "Kill him!" yelled one of the Marines angrily, his words raising the crowd's morale as they charged toward Diddy. Hopefully, you all can entertain me somewhat," declared Diddy with a feral grin as he threw the corpse he held to some of the charging Marines, causing them to fall back. Looking at the incoming horde of Marines with their swords and other various weapons swinging about, I merely grinned as I brandished my staff before violently swinging it toward the first wave of Marines. The instant my staff made contact with their bodies, I heard nothing but crunching as they were lifted off the ground and flung overboard, though they were dead before they even reached the water. Sensing a few people attacking me from behind, I used Tekai, causing their swords and axes to practically bounce off my skin as I turned around while swinging my staff, hitting several Marines into other approaching Marines. Yet the horde of enemies quickly filled their spots as they lunged toward me from all angles. Seeing the numerous amount of Marines nearing me with their weapons held high, I smirked and raised my staff before slamming onto the deck of the ship, creating a small hole in the ground. Yet my actions caused the lunging Marines to get hit with numerous wooden shrapnel. Quickly retracting my staff while the Marines were still in the air lunging toward me, I swiftly stabbed them all in quick succession, creating a deep imprint in their abdomen as I flung them into the horde of Marines. However, my actions did little to stop the sea of Marines that charged toward me. This is what I've been craving. There is nothing more chaotic than battle, thought Diddy with a feral grin as he crouched while gripping his staff before lunging into the sea of Marines, carving a path of killing. While amongst the seemingly infinite Marines, with every single swing of my staff, I injured several while killing numerous more. Halfway through my fun, I noticed the other ship had approached the boat I was currently on, and by placing a long plank between the two ships, they began boarding mine as tens of Marines piled onto the ship every few seconds. Men, don't be fooled. He may look tough and have killed many of our brothers and sisters, but ultimately, he is only one man. His stamina isn't infinite, yelled a higher-ranking Marine officer with a stern expression while pointing his sword toward Diddy from the upper deck, overlooking the battle. His words significantly raised the morale as the Marines once again charged toward Diddy. Exclaimed Diddy with his signature chaotic laugh, amused by the man's words, as he stood on the deck littered with numerous Marine corpses. Seeing the second horde of Marines charge toward me, I couldn't help but smile as I once again lunged into the sea of Marines while brandishing my staff. "Please spare dash," said a terrified Marine as he dropped his weapon and ran away, though the moment he turned around, a whooshing noise was heard, and the next instant, his headless body collapsed to the ground. Having killed the final Marine, I retracted my staff and approached the captain of the ship, who was nervously looking at me from the upper deck as I stepped over piles of corpses that littered the deck. In fact, there were so many corpses I couldn't even see the deck, which is saying something since I'm confident most of the Marines were sent overboard after receiving my attacks. Jumping up to the upper deck, I landed on the railing, dyeing it red from the crimson blood that dripped from my body as I looked the captain of the ship in the eye, causing him to flinch as he took a step back from sensing my unruly killing intent that had grown from the massacre I had just committed. What do why you want, why you monster? Yelled the profusely sweating Marine officer as he attempted to gather his courage, though one look from Diddy dispelled any he had. Hee, no need to be so afraid. As much as I would like to, I won't kill you. After all, I need someone to recount my feats. Besides, that little massacre had satisfied me. For now, replied Diddy with a feral grin while eyeing the man, though his words had greatly relieved him. Just as I was about to ask the man a question, I suddenly sensed someone, a relatively powerful person, appear behind me, and as I had just exited from a battle, I was still jumpy, so to speak, so with incredible swift and agile movements, I powerfully pushed off the railing, causing it to break, as I lunged toward the person while swinging my staff. Yet, just before my staff collided with them, the person outstretched their hand and grabbed my staff, causing a small gust of wind as they stopped it just a foot away from hitting their face. Oh, it's you, Freya. You should know how I am when in battle. Next time, announce your presence. Said Diddy with a feral grin that calmed down when he realized who he had attacked. Yes, I know. Now can you retract your staff? Replied Freya lightly, while holding Diddy's staff with one hand that had transformed into her monster form. Clicking my tongue, I retracted my staff and landed back on the upper deck while Freya landed beside me, causing the Marine officer to nearly run toward her, though before she could deprive the man of his vitality, I stopped her. Leave him be. We need someone to inform the Marines about what we've done here. We can't do that if everyone is dead. Said Diddy as he approached the man and slapped him while holding back his strength, snapping the man out of the trance Freya's appearance had put him into. I know, don't need to tell me twice, remarked Freya as she reined in her bewitching abilities to the best of her control. An incredibly gorgeous woman, An a mink. Why you two, why you're the ones our Rear Admiral Hina informed us about. Why you're from Karate Island. Yelled the man in shock and terror as his gaze constantly shifted between Freya and Diddy. Hee, hear that, Freya? They've already got us in their sights, and to think they would send a Rear Admiral, the fourth highest ranking Marine, as reinforcements. Karate Island must have had some decent connections to the W. Remarked Diddy with a smirk at the man's words, yet not once did he feel worried. In fact, it was the opposite. His heart started to pound in eagerness from confronting a Rear Admiral. Yes, that is quite surprising. I had expected they would send a Commodore, along with a few captains at most. Then again, neither of us knows the inner workings of the Marines, so it's not like we could have expected it. Said Freya with a nod as she folded her arms and leaned against the railing. Ensign Clove, do you read me? I repeat, Ensign Clove, do you read me? This is Captain Leaf. Exclaimed an urgent voice that originated from the man's Marine jacket. Don't look at me. Aren't you supposed to pick it up? He's your superior, after all. Said Diddy with a slight smirk as he looked at the man, who goes by Clove, though cause he was covered in blood, he looked more frightening than usual. This is Ensign Clove. I hear you loud and clear, Captain Leaf. Replied Clove hesitantly as he reached into his jacket and grabbed a transponder snail, which, amusingly, had a little Marine hat on its two eyes. That's good. I had watched everything that had transpired from the outpost, so I presume the pirates have been defeated? Asked the voice coming from the transponder snail relatively calm, though Clove didn't respond right away as he had glanced at the lower deck, which was filled with corpses. Ensign Clove, is everything all right? Why aren't you responding? Added the man with a slightly worried voice, though before Clove could respond, Diddy snatched the transponder snail from his hands. To answer your question, Captain Leaf, no, everything is not all right. My first mate and I have just slaughtered your entire fighting force, and you're next. Stated Diddy with a smirk as he approached Freya, leaving Clove. Who is this? State your name right now. Yelled Leaf commandingly in anger, though Diddy merely chuckled. We're the Frenzy Pirates. I'm Captain Diddy, and this is my Vice Captain Freya. Introduce yourself. Replied Diddy as he held the transponder snail to Freya, though she just glanced at it before ignoring him. Well, never mind. My first mate clearly doesn't wish to be a little fun, but we've just set sail from Karate Island, and now we're here. Added Diddy with a slight smirk as he looked at the transponder snail's surprised reaction. Karate Island. You must be the ones Rear Admiral Hina had warned us about. A mink and an incredibly beautiful woman. Stated Lead rather solemnly, and before he could speak, Diddy interrupted him. Yep, that's us. Now don't worry so much. I was just taking a little break from killing hundreds of Marines. We're about to step foot onto Batarilla. When we do, I'll be taking your life, along with everyone else's life on that island. Prepare. declared Diddy with a vicious grin as he squeezed the transponder snail until it exploded in his hands. Throwing the bits of the snail into the sea, I smirked as I approached Clove and grabbed him by his collar as I lifted him into the air, dismissing his pathetic attempts at stopping me. Walking toward the ship's edge, I spotted our small boat nearby and threw the man toward our ship. "Come on, Freya," said Diddy as he jumped into the air and propelled himself toward his boat while Freya sprouted large black leathery wings from her back, following behind Diddy. Landing on the boat, I heard Clove screaming as he was about to collide with our ship, but just before he did, Freya appeared and caught him, gently setting him down while she landed beside me. "Can you not throw someone at our ship next time? He would have damaged the deck," said Freya with a frown while eyeing Diddy, though he merely laughed in response. With the two of us back on the boat, along with an extra person, we sailed past the three lifeless battleships as we continued nearing the island's port in the distance. However, while approaching the main island, I spotted numerous rows of cannons lining the edge of the dock, and a few seconds later, an explosion was heard followed by a puff of smoke as tens of dark spots suddenly became visible in the sky. Is it just me, or is this place even more guarded than Karate Island? I suppose Batarilla isn't just an average island, said Diddy with a grin as he clutched his bow staff and jumped into the air, approaching the rain of cannonballs. Nearing the fastly approaching cannonballs that threatened to rain down upon our ship, I swung my bow staff at the incoming cannonballs, causing many of them to divert off their original path, while the ones that wouldn't have hit my ship in the first place were left alone as they sank into the ocean and exploded. Unfortunately, while we were relatively close to the island, it would still take a few minutes until our ship arrived at the docks, so until then, I would be forced to stay in the air and protect my ship, something I found to be very tedious and annoying as they didn't lighten their downpour of attacks one bit. Ugh, alright, I'm done with merely protecting the ship. I'm not the type to be so passive, thought Diddy with a smirk as he reached forth, and instead of deflecting the cannonballs, he caught one. Catching the hot cannonball with my hand, I reeled my arm back before powerfully hurling it to the senders, and the instant the cannonball hit them, it erupted into a massive fiery explosion that caused a chain reaction as its explosion erupted all the other cannonballs, resulting in a fireworks show in the middle of the day. Hee hee, I didn't anticipate that, remarked Diddy with a smirk as he viewed the fiery explosion, which carried a tint of red from the sheer volume of blood within it. Although I had detonated nearly the entire dock with my one attack, I stayed floating in the air just in case they were still able to retaliate. Yet after a few seconds passed and seeing no cannonballs being launched toward me, I returned to my ship, which had caught up to me. "Well, that was surprisingly easy," said Freya while sitting at the helm as she glanced between Diddy and the destroyed dock, which was now being ravaged by flames. "Hee hee, it's their fault for keeping armed cannonballs right beside each other. They had it coming," replied Diddy with a chuckle as he holstered Nagarese and landed beside Freya, the two completely ignoring their terrified passenger. Without any cannon fire, the rest of the way toward the island was relatively mellow and uneventful. Once we finally arrived at the port, we didn't dock all the way and instead just wrapped a rope around one of the wooden support pillars before jumping onto the dock. Looking back, I saw Freya floating over while carrying with her the man whose name I had forgotten before tossing him on the pier. "Why you two, what are you going to do?" asked Clove as he stood up and blocked the path before unsheathing his sword while pointing it at Diddy and Freya with a hardened expression. "Huh? Isn't it obvious? We're pirates after all, so we must play the part accordingly. We will kill, pillage, destroy, kill, and some more killing before eventually leaving this island. Since we are a newly formed pirate crew, we've got a quota to fill," replied Diddy with a smirk while eyeing the man whose face morphed into anger at his words. "I may not be powerful enough to stop you two, but as a marine officer, I must always uphold justice. So if you wish to get to the town, you move dash," stated Clove passionately with anger as he attempted to attack Diddy, though all of a sudden, he instantly came to a halt as his trembling eyes, full of fear, looked at Diddy. Smirking at the man who was motionlessly standing before me while profusely sweating as I blasted him with my full-on bloodlust, I approached the terrified man and looked him dead in the eye. Yet not even 2 seconds later, the man dropped his sword and fell to the ground as he looked at me with eyes full of terror. "Hee hee, to always uphold justice? Your will isn't strong enough to uphold justice," said Diddy with a deranged smile while eyeing the trembling man before reeling in his bloodlust and walking right past him. Monster," muttered the now hysterical Clove while trembling in fear on the ground. "Unleashing your bloodlust might not have been the best move. He seems to have gone crazy, and asking a crazy man to describe a series of events isn't exactly trustworthy," mentioned Freya as she glanced at the man before ignoring him while following Diddy. "Well, it seems like we'll need to keep another witness alive," said Diddy as the two exited the dock and entered the deserted town. While walking through the port town, I raised my eyebrow at how desolate the place seemed. There wasn't a single person on the streets, well, except for the occasional homeless person that inhabited dark alleys. But other than that, not a single person was present. Either the Marines had warned them, or they witnessed the massive chain explosion. But it seems like the city's inhabitants are hidden away. It must not be their first encounter with pirates then, remarked Freya while observing the desolate city as they walked past numerous open shops. Hee, it doesn't matter, does it? They can't escape from my senses. I can hear their ragged breathing and nervously beating hearts. This may have been somewhat effective against normal people, but not us, stated Diddy with a smirk as he suddenly looked at a building to his right, only to spot a woman peering through the curtains to hurriedly hide once more. In all honesty, although I had told the man we would pillage this island, I had no such intentions of actually doing so. What was the point of money? If I wanted something, I would take it through brute force, and if brute force wasn't an option, that just meant I wasn't strong enough. Violence. If it's not solving all your problems, you simply aren't using enough of it, mused Diddy with a smirk as he grabbed his bow staff and suddenly turned around, heading toward the marine outpost in the distance. Freya, gather everyone into one spot. It'll be much easier to kill them all when I don't need to search the entire village for them. I'm going to check up on the marine base. The captain shouldn't have died from my last attack, and I'm sure he is probably still alive. Hopefully, he's contacting Rear Admiral Hina, wherever she is, stated Diddy with a feral grin as he jumped into the air and propelled himself through the sky. Fine, but I will feast on the men until you arrive, replied Freya with a shake of her head as she entered the building from which the woman was previously peering. Nearing the marine outpost, which was situated on a cliff just above the water, I noticed that except for the rows of now destroyed cannons, everything else was relatively intact. A few shattered pieces here and there, but other than that, everything was good. Landing just before the building, I busted through the doors, and the instant I did so, I was bombarded with a shower of bullets and several cannonballs. This continued for nearly a full minute before everything eventually calmed down. Did we get him, Captain?" asked a Marine officer hesitantly who was manning a cannon while looking at the smoke before glancing at an injured man in the distance. Though the instant he did so, a bullet hole suddenly appeared in his head. Fire! Yelled the captain, causing the numerous Marines to continue their previous onslaught. Yet as if their attacks were nothing but a joke, another Marine would be killed every few seconds by a hole suddenly appearing in their head. Their little ambush slightly surprised me, mainly because the entry doors were soundproof, which blocked me from hearing anything that happened within the base. Though other than slightly surprising me, their ambush did nothing else. The rain of bullets was ignored by using Tekai, while I would slightly divert the numerous cannonballs from hitting me, and though they did explode, Tekai offset most, if not all of the damage I received, only leaving me with a few patches of burnt fur. Hee, I hope you didn't think this pathetic ambush was actually going to do anything? Asked Diddy with a feral smile as he exited the dense smoke with his outstretched finger, using Shurgon from a distance while eyeing the few remaining Marines. Before they could react, I used Shurgon a few more times in quick succession, firing small bullet-like projectiles made of wind that pierced the heads of the remaining Marines, leaving only the wounded captain. It seems like I was right. My last attack wasn't enough to kill a captain, muttered Diddy with a smirk as he casually approached the captain, who was unsheathing his dual swords. Just because I'm wounded, pirate, don't think you'll kill me so easily. I've been allowed to learn the secret techniques of the Marines dash, said the man just as he was about to attack Diddy, though he stopped speaking when Diddy suddenly vanished from his spot only to appear before him, already in an attacking motion. Tekai! Yelled the man as he crossed his arms and hardened his body, hoping to block Diddy's blow. Seeing the man use Tekai, I was mildly surprised as this was the first human I'd seen use one of the Rokushiki techniques. However, his mastery over it was so pathetic that I found it almost demeaning he would actually use it to try and stop my punch. Completely ignoring his hardened body, I landed a devastating blow on his abdomen, causing the man to spit blood before getting flung into the distance until he crashed into a wall. However, even though he was unconscious, he was still alive. Well, I needed to keep someone alive, muttered Diddy as he holstered Nagar SA before ignoring the unconscious man embedded into the wall. With the captain having been taken care of, I continued exploring the building as I could still sense other living beings nearby. Busting through the walls, I killed anyone I came in contact with, whether it was the few scattered Marines that attempted to flee or some unlucky choreboys that happened to encounter me. Every person ended up dying. Hell, I had even stumbled across a few jail cells that were filled with criminals they must have captured. And the funny thing was, when they saw me killing the Marines, They got all excited and started rooting for me, not even knowing they were next on the chopping block. "WY? We are the same as you," exclaimed a frightened prisoner as he looked at Diddy, surrounded by several corpses of inmates. "Heh, you think we're the same just because I oppose the Marines? Don't make me laugh. You're just a pathetic weakling who couldn't even deal with a small group of Marines. Don't lump me together with the likes of you. It's degrading," replied Diddy with an annoyed expression as he approached the last prisoner, who was backing away in fear until he hit a wall. Without giving the man a chance to retaliate, I thrust my staff right at him, causing his head to squish between my staff and the wall behind him, resulting in his head popping like a watermelon, nearly dirtying me in his brain juices. Well, that should be the final person to kill. I've just about explored this entire outpost, and the only place I haven't looked is the captain's office. It's only right to save the best place for last, mused Diddy as he holstered Naga-sa and exited through the hole in the wall he had previously made. Busting through the ceilings, I arrived at the topmost floor, the same floor where I'd expect to find the one in charge, or more specifically, his office. Walking about, it didn't take long to find it, though the name tags on the doors did help save some time. Opening the door, I entered and was greeted with a pretty generic office by my standards. A desk with a chair, large windows that allow one to see the clear ocean, a couple of bookshelves, some paintings along with various other decorations. The only thing that stood out was the large bulletin board that was covered in numerous bounties for pirates and criminals. Bounties? This is my first time seeing this. Considering our location, I'm sure they must mainly have bounties for people in South Blue. Hee, I'm curious to know who my competitors are, thought Diddy with a slight smirk as he ignored everything else and neared the board filled with bounties. Looking at the board, I spotted numerous bounties, ranging anywhere from 12,000 all the way to 50 million berries. However, most of the bounties that were less than 1 million had a large red X crossed over their picture, and it didn't take a genius to realize they were either killed or captured. Though it's not like it mattered to me, I was only interested in the people with a bounty of over 10 million. Let's see here. Eustace Captain Kidd, captain of the Kid Pirates, a bounty of 48 million berries, along with Massacre Solitaire Killer, who has a bounty of 35 million berries. Those two look decently powerful. I wonder when I'll get to fight them, remarked Diddy with a feral grin as he eyed the bounty posters of Kid and Killer before setting them down and looking at another poster. Shuju, captain of the Shuju Pirates, a bounty of 36 million berries. Jewelry Bonnie, captain of the Bonnie Pirates, a bounty of 32 million berries, muttered Diddy as he looked at two bounty posters of Shuju and Bonnie before again ignoring them. Foxy, captain of the Foxy Pirates, a bounty of 24 million berries. Euro, captain of the Euro Pirates, a bounty of 20 million berries. What unoriginal names. Couldn't think of anything cooler, said Diddy as he glanced at the two bounty posters of Foxy and Gryo before once more setting them down. While there were many more wanted posters, only those 6 interested me, so I ignored the others, except for one more, which had the highest bounty among all the other wanted posters. Looking at the picture of a spiffy older man with white hair and a beard wearing a tuxedo while looking rather friendly, I picked up his wanted poster and closely examined it. Seabass Grandfather Visage, leader of the Elegant Mafia, a bounty of 50 million berries. Heh, I don't know why, but he seems interesting, remarked Diddy while looking at the bounty poster before grabbing the other 6 posters and stuffing them in his pockets. Having finished examining the bulletin board, I turned around. Just as I was about to exit the office, I spotted something on the desk, and with a mere glance, I was utterly astonished by what I saw. Nearing the desk, I carefully examined the wanted poster, wanting to make sure I didn't see things wrong. Gold Roger, former captain of the Roger Pirates and king of the pirates, a bounty of 5,564,800 berries, muttered Diddy in pure unadulterated astonishment as his heart began to beat quickly while looking at the man in the picture covered by a red X, king of the pirates? I don't know what that is, but to be given that title along with such an insane bounty, he must have been mighty. I really wish he was still alive. I would have loved to kill him in battle, thought Diddy with a feral grin while slightly wishing he had been born 2 decades earlier. I had thought about taking the poster, but I saw no reason to. The man may have an insane bounty, but he was already dead. There was no point in keeping a dead man's bounty. Besides, even though he must have been very powerful, he wasn't strong enough. After all, he was still killed. Channeling lighting into my hand, I touched the wanted poster with my nail, causing the poster to get set on flames. Smirking, I turned around and jumped through the window before propelling myself through the air back toward the town, while letting the base burn until there was nothing left. Moving through the air, I quickly arrived back in the town and spotted Freya in the middle of the street shabbowinking several men while hundreds of people formed a circle around her, both men and women, as they eyed Freya with fanatical expressions fueled by their desire for her. Landing in the circle, which was already littered with dried-up corpses of men, I neared Freya just as she finished devouring the vitality of multiple men, causing them to collapse on the ground beside her previous victims. Heh, seems like you've been having fun without me, Freya. How many people have you already killed? 100, 200? Asked Diddy with a smirk as he eyed Freya, who was wearing the skimpiest bikini imaginable. Well, I had warned you, didn't I? I wasn't going to wait for you to return, replied Freya calmly as she licked the semen smeared on her cheek with her unnaturally long tongue. Whatever, I don't care, as long as you leave some for me. Anyways, now that I'm here, release your hold on them. It won't be fun killing them if they don't descend into chaos, remarked Diddy with a savage grin, causing Freya to sigh before executing his orders as she forcefully lowered her innate seductive nature. With Freya's actions, it didn't take long for the people to awaken from their trance as they quickly descended into confusion, though that confusion only morphed into fear when they noticed corpses before shifting their eyes toward the two of us. Well, enjoy your fun. I have already devoured most of the men on this island, so you're left with mostly women, stated Freya, wings sprouting from her back as she flew into the air, landing atop one of the many buildings, intending to watch the massacre Diddy was about to commit. Ignoring Freya, I looked upon the crowd of confused and fearful people while brandishing my staff, powerfully slamming my staff on the ground, creating a tremor that reverberated throughout the surrounding area. My actions had quietened down the crowd as all focus was now on me. I'm going to kill you all. Make sure to fight back, declared Diddy with a smirk, and without any warning, he lunged into the crowd, creating a chaotic scene as they all attempted to flee, which only caused Diddy to frown slightly while killing. Why the frown? I thought you enjoy slaughtering, asked Freya as she floated down to Diddy once the massacre was over, dyeing the streets and nearby destroyed buildings in red. Wrong, I enjoy causing chaos and fighting. Killing just so happens to be a large part of it. However, these people didn't try to fight back at all. They practically let themselves be killed by me. There was no resistance whatsoever. The people in Karate Island fought back, and although it was futile, it was enjoyable, yet this was rather boring, replied Diddy, whose body was covered in blood, with a frown as he holstered Naga-sa while observing the slaughter he had committed. Whatever, no point in thinking too deeply about it. What's done is done. Let's head back to the ship and set sail. Nothing is left for us here, added Diddy as he shook his head and returned to normal before heading toward the dock, while Freya silently followed him. Once we arrived back at the docks, the man from before was still lying about on the ground while trembling, and the moment he laid eyes on us, his trembling only increased, though neither of us paid him any mind. Hopping on the boat, we pulled the rope off the pillar and sailed back into the sea, leaving Batarilla behind after turning the place into a graveyard. It's been a few days since we departed from Batarilla. I'm sure Rear Admiral Hina or some other high-ranking Marine officer has discovered what's transpired at Batarilla. However, currently, Freya and I were heading toward the next closest island, which isn't too far away. We should arrive at the said island just before dusk. While lying in a hammock, which is placed on the upper deck a few meters behind the helm that Freya usually occupies, I spotted a white seagull flying about through the sky, and while that wouldn't usually arouse any interest, it had a hat and what looked to be a pouch attached to its body. What the? Muttered Diddy in confusion as he eyed the bird descending towards him after noticing their ship. Eyeing the incoming bird, I hopped off the hammock I was lying in and near the edge of the ship. A few moments later, the bird arrived, landing on the ship's railing just beside me. Now that I got a better look at the bird, I spotted what seemed to be newspapers in its pouch, causing me to raise an eyebrow, but since the bird was already here, I decided to take one. I was slightly curious anyway. After I took a newspaper from the bird, it caught at me before flapping its wings as it took to the sky once more, going to continue delivering newspapers to people out at sea. At least, that is what I assumed it would do. Ignoring the bird, I headed back towards my hammock, and once I was comfy, I started reading through the newspaper while being bathed in the ocean breeze. However, the instant I opened to the first page, the first thing I saw was a picture of Freya and I along with two photos of what looks to be Karate Island and Batarilla. Of course, the aftermath of the two islands. Two islands in South Blue, the birthplace of all martial arts, Karate Island and Batarilla, have been destroyed, and every single resident has been brutally murdered. Marines say only 2 individuals did it. The pictures below are the ones responsible. The culprits are still at large, and until they have been caught or killed by the Marines, no island in South Blue is safe. Chuckling at their description, I smirked as I hopped off my hammock again and approached Freya, causing her to turn around from the sound of my footsteps while glancing at me before her attention shifted to the newspaper in my hand. Hey, looky here, Freya, we're on the newspaper's front page. It seems our hard work has really started to pay off, remarked Diddy with a smirk as he handed the newspaper to Freya, who was interested in reading the article about them. Yes, but it doesn't mention anything about our pirate group, so we still aren't deemed important by the Marines. At least not yet, replied Freya lightly as she returned the newspaper to Diddy, who merely grinned before setting it on fire with his lightning. That just means we haven't caused enough chaos. Speaking of chaos, look what we finally encountered, a pirate ship, stated Diddy with a grin while pointing toward a ship in the distance with a Jolly Roger atop its mast. Pirates, what an unlucky day for them to have encountered us, muttered Freya while licking her lips as she changed the ship's course, intending to intercept the pirate ship. While Freya steered the ship to head directly for the pirates in the distance, they seemed to have noticed us as well since they shifted their course as well. Now they were also heading toward us. A few minutes later, our ships arrived side by side, allowing Freya and I to properly view the pirates, consisting of several men with swords on the deck. However, I could sense more people down below. However, before we started fighting, unlike the enemy pirates' much larger ship, we didn't have an anchor to quickly halt our momentum, causing us to continue sailing right by their ship. Of course, I wasn't going to let that happen. We had business with them after all. Jumping to the lower deck, I ran to the fore of the ship and clutched the large middle wood, or the stem of the vessel if you will. Digging my nails into the wood, I made my other hand flat as I utilized Jeppo, slamming my palm against the air, which momentarily created a solid platform, causing the ship to instantly come to a halt, resulting in the back of the boat lifting out of the ocean from the sudden loss of momentum, though everything was fine as the ship landed back into the water. After a few seconds. God damn it, Diddy. Next time, inform me when you're about to do that, said Freya in anger as she stood up and approached the ship's side while cursing Diddy, who merely chuckled in response. Once Freya and I arrived at the middle of the ship, which is where the enemy pirates placed their plank as they all quickly boarded our ship while unsheathing their swords, though they all ignored me since they were too busy ogling Freya. "See, Captain, do you see her? We've stumbled across the jackpot," yelled one of the pirates who was eyeing Freya with desire and lust. "I see her, you fool, you don't need to tell me," said the captain, who was a rather large rough-looking man as he slapped the pirate back his head and approached Freya while observing her with lustful intentions. "I'm Gruff, captain of the Gruff Pirates with a bounty of 1,234,567 berries. Board my ship, and I shall protect you. All you must do is become my woman and service me with your body," stated Gruff sternly as he looked down at Freya, who he towered over with his large size. "You see, Captain Gruff, while I'd love to become the woman of such a strong, large, and handsome man, I can't. That man over there refuses to let me go, and as long as he is alive, I'm forced to follow him," replied Freya as she seductively leaned against the man while erotically touching his chest before her expression morphed into fake sadness, causing the aroused Gruff and his men to look at Diddy in anger. "I understand. After I kill that bastard, you'll be free to become my woman. Men, kill him," said Gruff in anger as he commanded his subordinates to kill Diddy while he took this time to feel up Freya. Having seen the entire thing play out, I couldn't stop my eye from twitching as I watched the pirates run toward me with their weapons held high. Once they arrived near me, I sighed at Freya's actions before switching my focus to the man before me. Blocking the man's sword with my bowstaff, I kicked him away before slamming my bowstaff atop his head, instantly killing him, though I suddenly stopped moving when I realized what I had just done, causing me to groan while rubbing my head. "That's going to be a pain to clean up," muttered Diddy as he nimbly evaded 2 slashes from the front before swinging Naga-sa horizontally at the attackers, caving in their chests, causing them to spit blood as they got sent flying overboard. Since I didn't want to make a disgusting mess on the deck of my ship, I opted not to aim for the head, which made no difference to me as the pirates were weak, and just one swing of my bowstaff killed 3 or 4. However, this battle was rather enjoyable since, unlike what transpired at Batarilla, these people are actually fighting back. Unfortunately, there weren't many of them. After killing roughly 35, the only person left was the Gruff, who was currently too preoccupied with fondling Freya's breasts to even realize his entire crew had been killed. Approaching the two, I tapped the man's shoulder with my bowstaff, causing him to break out of his stupor and glance at me, only to ignore me and continue fondling Freya's breasts. "Good, it seems you've killed that man. Now that you're my woman, let's get back on my ship. I don't think I can retrain myself any longer," said Gruff lustfully as he grabbed Freya's hand and turned around again, only to be stopped by Diddy. Hee hee, where do you think you're going with my vice captain? Asked Diddy with a grin as he blocked Gruff, who displayed a shocked expression when he noticed Diddy was still alive. How are you still alive, and where are my men? Exclaimed Gruff in anger as he released Freya's hand and eyed Diddy. Dead, obviously, and you'll be next, said Diddy while smirking, his words filling Gruff with anger as he flexed his muscles, causing him to look even bigger than before. You. For killing my crew, I'll kill you, yelled Gruff in rage as he grabbed the massive axe off his back and powerfully swung down atop Diddy's head. Seeing the incoming attack, I didn't bother dodging and merely used Tech-Eye to block the axe. Although Tech-Eye is naturally more vulnerable to bladed objects, against someone like this man, it didn't matter. He may have massive muscles, but in my eyes, they were all for show. Haha, that's what you get for killing my C-dash, said Gruff happily, though before he could finish his sentence, he noticed Diddy was completely unscathed while his axe had a massive dent. Pushing the dented axe off my head, I used Soru, something I hardly use simply because I hadn't come across an opponent that forced me to use it, and appeared right in front of him using a speed he couldn't even track. Before he could respond, I used one of my 72 techniques I'd mastered over the past 5 years. 72 Bien, Variation 13, Exploding Heart Release, said Diddy as he timed his attack to be in sync with his heart, resulting in a devastating punch to Gruff's body that sent him flying far off into the distance. Seeing Gruff shoot off into the distance while leaving a trail of blood, I looked over to Freya and smirked before approaching her, my killing intent leaking out. Just because you're the vice captain doesn't mean you don't need to be straightened out every now and then, declared Diddy with a grin as he neared Freya, who responded by also releasing her killing intent. What? Can't even enjoy little pranks every now and then? Questioned Freya, who was embedded into the side of the enemy pirate ship, with a smirk as she wiped the blood leaking from her mouth while eyeing the hovering Diddy. Hee hee, of course I can. Didn't you enjoy my prank? Replied Diddy with a smirk while hovering in the air by continuously using Jeppo to keep him afloat as he folded his arms. TCH, you call beating up your vice captain a prank? What a crazy captain, remarked Freya with a frown as she exited the ship, using her wings to keep her from drowning in the ocean below. In my eyes, it's a prank. You're still alive after all, said Diddy with a grin as he kicked toward Freya, launching a large Rankyaku that threatened to slice her in half. I may have attacked her, but I was obviously holding back, so just before it connected with Freya, she evaded the large blade of wind, causing it to hit the big ship behind her as it sliced right through it like butter before continuing far off in the distance, eventually dissipating. With the boat now perfectly cut in half, everything that was inside it, such as gold, weapons, alcohol, and other miscellaneous things, came spilling out as it began sinking into the ocean. However, neither of us paid it any attention, our sole focus being on the person in front of each other. So, do you intend to continue this little prank, as you call it, or will you stop? Asked Freya while warily eyeing Diddy, ready to retaliate if he were to attack again. Hey, I'll stop for now. Having fought you countless times, it's no longer as fun as it used to be. Knowing everything about your opponent has its downsides, I suppose, replied Diddy with a feral grin as he shook his head and retracted his killing intent before approaching the ship. Landing on the ship, which still had the corpse of one of the enemy pirates on it, I headed back toward my hammock, and while I was doing that, Freya had also landed on the ship before she went to the captain's seat to steer the ship, looking perfectly fine as if I hadn't just injured her a few moments ago. Bastard, making me waste some of my reserve vitality, muttered Freya under her breath as she sat down and began manning the helm. After defeating the Gruff pirates and ending our little scuffle, we were now back on track, heading toward the next island, which is in fact a country, and not just any country. It's one of the 170 kingdoms affiliated with the world government, Brisk Kingdom. Just thinking about arriving at Brisk Kingdom and creating mass destruction and chaos causes my heart to beat in excitement, and I can hardly contain myself. If I knew exactly where it was, I'd have long since used Jeppo to get there quicker. Hee hee, I can't wait to arrive at Brisk Kingdom. You think after destroying that kingdom, they'll finally start taking us seriously, Freya? Asked Diddy calmly with a grin while looking at the sky as he rested in the hammock. I have no doubt they'll take us seriously. Brisk Kingdom is one of the many countries affiliated with the WG, and destroying the kingdom will be nearly the same as declaring war against them since you'll be challenging their authority. Only a psycho would do something crazy, like declaring war against the entire world. Unfortunately for me, I'm stuck with a crazy captain, replied Freya with a frown as she glanced at Diddy, who merely chuckled in response, and although she would never admit it, a small part of her was excited. No, you've got it wrong, Freya. I would be declaring war against the WG, not the pirates, revolutionists, or anyone else who doesn't side with the WG. If I truly wish to declare war against the entire world, I need to be seen as a common enemy from every faction, and such a thing will be very difficult to achieve. However, if I so desire to be seen as the enemy of the world, I've got plenty of time, and I suppose a good way to start would be declaring war against the W. Remarked Diddy with a feral grin as he unleashed his killing intent at full blast, which created slight ripples in the ocean. So you're telling me not only do you intend to declare against the WG, but you also intend to fight against every other faction in existence? Exclaimed Freya in surprise as she eyed Diddy, his words causing even her to be taken aback. Haha, no, I currently don't have any interest in doing so, but it's not off the table. Who knows, maybe in the future, I'll change my mind, but right now, let's focus on one faction at a time. Said Diddy with a grin as he retracted his killing intent, causing the water to return to normal. Besides, if I'm not wrong, Seabass' grandfather, Visage, has his base of operations in Brisk Kingdom, so that means I'll more than likely bump into him. For some reason, I find him very interesting. Added Diddy with a smirk while looking up at the sky, admiring its beauty. That's the second time I've heard you mention this Seabass Visage. Do you intend to have him join your little pirate crew or something? Asked Freya as she steered the ship until it was back on course for the Brisk Kingdom. Don't know. If he is strong, then why not? Why ask such a question? Worried I'll replace you with him. Replied Diddy as he glanced at Freya, who merely huffed before ignoring him. Anyways, I'm going to take a nap. Muttered Diddy lightly as he closed his eyes, and not even a few seconds later, he was already fast asleep. Ha, what a crazy man I need to kill. Remarked Freya with a shake of her head. It's the middle of the night, and currently, we are docked in an old abandoned dock east of Brisk Kingdom, a few hours past the estimated arrival time. But considering we had taken a detour around nearly the whole island, such a thing is expected. Now why have we taken a detour around the entire island instead of launching a raid on Brisk Kingdom? Mainly because when we arrived, it was already night, and I wanted it to be daytime so that everyone knew who was attacking. Also because I spotted a whole bunch of marine ships patrolling the west coast, which is the area where we originally intended to dock at, and I didn't want my first ship to get destroyed from hundreds of cannon fire, at least not so soon. Surprised you opted to avoid a fight. Is my captain finally learning? Mocked Freya with a happy smile, though she was forced to evade an attack from Diddy, who had swung his staff at her. What an annoying vice captain. It seems like you haven't changed in the last 7 years at all. Said Diddy with a frown as he holstered his staff while Freya smirked though she stayed quiet. Fighting in the dark isn't the most optimal. Who will recognize me in the cover of darkness? So until it's morning, we won't be launching a raid. Besides, I can use this chance to locate Seabass while you can go do whatever. Added Diddy as he shifted his focus toward the city in the distance, surprisingly still lively despite it being night. Aye, Captain. Replied Freya while seductively licking her lips as she sprouted wings from her back and took to the sky, not needing to worry about being discovered under cover of night. Watching Freya fly off toward the city, which for reference, is one of 5 cities of the Brisk Kingdom, the capital. Although I intend to destroy the Brisk Kingdom, to do that, I can't just decimate the capital city and leave. If I do that, the kingdom will still exist. I could destroy the cities, but that'll take a while, though I suppose Freya and I could split up into different cities. However, that'll still take a long time, possibly an entire day. I don't know the exact population of Brisk Kingdom, but even taking into account that it's one of the smaller kingdoms, its population will be at least over 1 million, and killing 1 million people isn't exactly something one can do quickly, not to mention people will flee and tracking them down will be a pain. Well, I won't be able to kill everyone. It's simply too time-consuming. Besides, most if not all of the civilians will run away, and it's not fun killing people with no will to fight. Mused Diddy as he walked through the small forest while approaching the capital city. Whatever, this is too much thinking for a simple raid. I'll just do what I want, and once I feel satisfied, we'll leave. Muttered Diddy with a shake of his head while exiting the small forest and nearing the city's walls. Approaching the city's walls, which for the record, weren't that tall, only about 3 meters, I jumped over them, officially arriving inside the city, though from the disgusting stench, old rickety houses, and malnourished people, it seemed like I landed inside the slums. Only downside to having such acute senses. Terrible smells are enhanced to very high degrees. Mused Diddy with a frown as he reluctantly held his breath while quickly running through the area, passing by numerous peasants who merely felt a strong gust of wind. Once I finally exited the slums, I sighed in relief and started casually walking down the street among the numerous people, though because of the poor lighting, most people didn't notice I wasn't a human, which made it easier to blend in amongst everyone. Now then, Where will be the best place to find sea bass visage? While walking down the streets, seemingly in the red light district, I witnessed the city's nightlife, and it was as generic as one would expect. Groups of intoxicated men entering brothels alongside women wearing skimpy clothing. I don't know why the red light district would be close to the slums. It doesn't feel very hygienic, though given that it's still the 16th century, I doubt anyone in the world is worried about hygiene, except for me. I may be a little crazy, but I'm not disgusting. There is a big line between the two, mused Diddy while walking through the city, ignoring the various women as he searched for the whereabouts of the sea bass visage. Considering the person I was looking for was a leader of a mafia called the Elegant Mafia, I presumed the people part of the group would be, well, elegant. So with that mindset, I figured I wouldn't find anyone affiliated with the Elegant Mafia entering brothels, though I could be wrong. But then again, what's elegant about a brothel? Besides, none of the people I spotted wore anything remotely classy. They were all wearing old, cheap, ragged clothing, as one would expect from peasants, and the few that weren't were only wearing decent clothes. Though I didn't completely give up on the red light district, an organized illegal gang would need money to operate properly, and who is to say these brothels aren't a part of their business? I may happen to come across someone affiliated with the Elegant Mafia who came to collect payment. However, unfortunately, that didn't seem to be the case, and for the next 30 or so minutes, I didn't spot anyone I would think would be a part of the mafia. Funnily enough though, I happened to hear rumors about a fantastic prostitute at one of the brothels who was able to send men to heaven in mere seconds, and it didn't take a genius to figure out it must have been Freya enjoying herself, surprised she hadn't sucked anyone dry yet. Annoying, but whatever, let's check a pub or bar. In movies, those places are always the best place to go when you're searching for information. Wonder if it works in real life too. Pondered Diddy as he shook his head and approached the end of the red light district. I don't know what this district is called, but looking around, I noticed several taverns and inns, though now that I think about it, this may very well be the same district, though I couldn't really care. Observing my options carefully, after a few minutes, I finally decided on which tavern to enter, and unsurprisingly, it also had the most traffic. Grayson Tavern, muttered Diddy as he stood before the entrance of the noisy building, while looking up at the glowing sign before shrugging his arms and entering. Just like one sees in movies, the instant I entered the tavern, though the music was still playing, everyone quieted down, and all eyes were focused on me, causing me to raise an eyebrow as I looked at everyone. What is why your kind D doing here? D don't you know to this place only A accepts humans? Yelled a drunk man angrily as he stood up and slowly approached Diddy, his oversized stature causing him to tower over him. Looking up at the large man, I merely smirked before blasting him, along with everyone else in the entire tavern. With my bloodlust, my actions caused the music to stop playing while the man standing before me instantly went pale and fell to the ground in fear while slightly trembling as he looked at me. Ignoring the man, I stepped over him and headed deeper into the tavern, passing by people sweating intensely while sitting at tables. When I arrived at the bar, everyone who was sitting there instantly stood up and distanced themselves from me. Sitting on one of the stools, I looked at the trembling and sweating bartender, who seemed to be on the verge of fainting, before attracting my killing intent, causing the man to calm down somewhat, though he was still very terrified. Hey, what's going on? Isn't this supposed to be a place where you can enjoy yourself? Play the music. Questioned Diddy with a grin as he looked at the numerous people beside him before eyeing the band on stage, who were just as frightened as everyone else. Shortly after I spoke, the band started playing music once more while everyone else began talking, though unlike before when people were yelling without restraint, they practically spoke in a whisper, though it didn't bother me. All I came here for was information. Bring me your best beer, ordered Diddy while tapping his nails on the counter as the bartender quickly began working on prepping the drink. The bartender must have been rather experienced because it wasn't even 10 seconds after I requested a drink, and a bottle of beer was already placed before me, though I'll say it didn't smell that tasty at all. Aye, it's on the house, said the bartender with a forced smile. Good, because I never had any intention to pay anyways, remarked Diddy with a smirk as he grabbed the bottle and began chugging the beer, only for him to spit it out onto the bartender a moment later. Ugh, utterly disgusting. I don't know what I was expecting. Alcohol in the 1500s wasn't going to taste good, not to mention I've never been a fan of beer, muttered Diddy with a frown as he threw the cup at the wall, creating a small hole. I see can you get you another D dash, said the bartender while shaking in fear for his life as he looked at Diddy's beastly eyes, which only further frightened him. Heh, I don't want alcohol. What I want to know is, where can I find the location of the Elegant Mafia? I have some business with Seabass Visage, stated Diddy with a smirk, though his words caused the entire tavern to quiet down again. Even the band stopped playing. "Oh, it seems like Seabass Visage is quite popular, so do any one of you know where I can find him?" asked Diddy as he turned around and eyed everyone, though everyone stayed silent and kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact, well, except for one person in the back. "For you to spout father's name like that, you must be new here. What's your name?" said a man in the corner of the tavern as he stood up and approached Diddy. Focusing on the man who was wearing a trench coat, a black hat, black pants, black shoes, and smoking a cigarette, approaching me, I smirked, and without any warning, I appeared right before him and tightly clutched his neck as I lifted him into the air. "My name? Hee, only people I deem worthy get to know my name, and you're not one of them. Take me to Seabass this instance, or I'll kill you along with everyone in this tavern," declared Diddy with a feral grin as he choked the man, who was attempting to break free, yet all of his actions proved futile. While holding the man by his neck, all of a sudden, he stopped moving. His arms and legs as they became soft while lifelessly dangling beside his body, causing me to raise an eyebrow since, while it may seem like I had killed him, I can still hear his heart powerfully beating. However, as I looked at the man again, I was surprised. While nothing about him had changed physically, I could tell he wasn't the same. The aura and demeanor drastically differed from before. Split personality? No, that couldn't be it. Even if that were the case, the change wouldn't be this drastic. It's almost like I'm holding someone completely different, mused Diddy with a frown as he released the man from his hold, causing him to fall to the ground while gasping for breath. "So, what are you?" "No, I should be asking who are you?" asked Diddy as he looked at the man who was regaining his bearings. "Hee, very perceptive. I'm surprised you managed to spot the difference. I think this is the first time I've ever been uncovered," remarked the man lightly as he stood up and dusted his clothes off before eyeing Diddy. "Well, you shouldn't be. Not many things are able to conceal themselves from my senses," said Diddy as he folded his arms while looking at him fix his clothes. "You're quite rough though, given your history of destroying 2 islands in the span of 1 week. It's nothing unexpected, Diddy D. Kong," mentioned the man with a slight smile, his words causing Diddy to display a bloodthirsty smirk. "Hee, since you know who I am, let me take a guess. Your Seabass grandfather Visage?" stated Diddy while looking at the man, who took off his hat and gave an elegant bow. "I would say in the flesh, but I'm sure, as you can see, this isn't my true body, merely one of the few vessels I can inhabit. So then, shall we take this somewhere more private, a place where we can speak to our heart's content?" said Seabass with an elegant smile, to which Diddy nodded in agreement. Shortly after nodding my head, Seabass's aura suddenly disappeared from the man's body, only for the previous man's aura to reappear, and although I could sense slight fear, it wasn't as much as I expected. "Follow me right this way, Kong. I shall take you to father per his orders," declared the man as he exited the tavern. With a smirk, I followed behind the man and left the tavern as well. We continued walking down the street, leaving the red light district as we seemingly headed into the market district, which was unsurprisingly empty, before suddenly making a sharp right down a dark, yet relatively clean alley, only stopping once we arrived at a set of stairs leading down to a dimly lit door. Walking down the set of stairs, we arrived just before the solid metal door, which would be impossible for the average man to pry open with brute force. But then again, I'm not average. However, there was no need for me to forcefully open the door, as the man leading me knocked on it a few times in a specific pattern, reminding me of Morse code. "Password," said a deep voice as a small slit opened on the door, allowing one to see a pair of brown eyes intently eyeing us, mainly focusing on me. "The mind reigns supreme over the body," stated the man as the slit in the door closed, and a few seconds later, a loud creaking noise was heard. The metal door slowly opened, revealing a large man. "Good to see you, brother. However, as the doorman and the first line of defense against possible enemies, I can't just allow any non-verified individuals into father's base," replied the large man in a deep voice as he intently and warily eyed Diddy, who merely smirked in response. "No problem, brother. I'd expect nothing less from the doorman. However, you don't need to worry about him. He's someone personally requested by father," remarked the man as he removed his hat and trench coat and placed it on a coat rack, which happened to also be filled with numerous other coats and hats. "Father, you say? All right then, brother, I'll allow him access. Just don't keep father waiting," said the large man with an understanding nod while looking at the man before hardening his gaze as he eyed Diddy once more. "And you, I don't know who you are to gather father's interest, but you're stepping into the elegant mafia's base of headquarters filled with over 100 sons and daughters, so don't try anything funny. You'll be killed before you even know it. Understand?" added the large man solemnly in a threatening manner as he eyed Diddy, who happened to be grinning. Brother, I wouldn't do that if I were Dash, advised the man anxiously, though before he could finish speaking, both men were suddenly enveloped in Diddy's bloodlust, causing the two to tremble intensely in fear, but to Diddy's surprise, they managed to stay standing firm. Hee, I would have killed you if either of you collapsed. However, you two have proven yourselves to be rather strong-willed, and you've garnered some of my respect, declared Diddy with a chuckle as he eyed the two with a feral grin while blasting them with his killing intent before eventually retracting it, allowing them to heave in relief. Brother, I can't allow someone like that near father. I've come across man-killers in my line of work, but I've never felt like that, not even when standing before an enraged father, yelled the large man in slight fear as he grabbed a pistol from his pocket and pointed it at Diddy, who was nonchalant and without any warning, fired his gun, hitting him square in the head. I'll tell father what happened. I'll take full responsibility and accept whatever punishment, but I can't allow someone that dangerous near father, added the large man as he sighed in relief, knowing Diddy was now dead, or was he? While the two men were talking so calmly like I was actually dead, I grabbed the round bullet from my head, and before either of them noticed I was still alive, I flicked toward the large man with enough force that it penetrated through his shoulder and lodged itself deeply into the wall behind him. Don't push your luck, I'm behaving rather mellow right now since Seabass is someone I'm interested in, and until I determine whether I'll kill him or not, I won't be acting too out of line. That was merely a warning, remarked Diddy with a slight smirk as he approached the large man who was grabbing his shoulder in pain while fearfully looking at Diddy. Come on, I've wasted enough time here. Take me to Seabass this instance, or I'll go there myself, and if I do that, I'll be making my own path, added Diddy as he ignored the large man and walked right past him while tapping his finger on the wall, causing cracks to form. I got it, said the man with a frown while glancing at the large man before sighing as he headed down the long hallway, Diddy following right behind. Now that the man wasn't wearing a hat and trench coat that covered most of his features, I noticed that he had a long scar that went from his collarbone all the way to his forehead at a slight angle. His muscles seemed rather prominent, not nearly as big as the dude from before, but he clearly knows how to train effectively. He's got green eyes and short white hair, which is quite the unique combination, though it's not like he could choose. Or maybe he did. Who knows what kind of abilities and devil fruits there are in this world? Anything is possible. As we walked through the base, I took my time and observed my surroundings. However, as this was my first time ever in a mafia base, I didn't have an excellent way to judge it, though the closest thing I could compare it to would have to be a mansion, mainly because of the sheer size. Although I didn't see most of the base, I was given a rough layout by using my ears to sense the area, similar to echolocation, though while I may have incredible hearing, my ears weren't built the same as a bat's, so my version of echolocation was most likely inferior. This area is rather large, probably even bigger than a noble's mansion, not to mention the number of people I can sense. I wouldn't mind going on a little rampage. I'm sure that'll create some good chaos, remarked Diddy with a savage-like grin, his words causing the white-haired man to gulp nervously as he couldn't differentiate whether he was joking or being serious. We've arrived at father's office, said the white-haired man as the two stopped before two beautiful doors that two men with rifles were guarding. Father, yelled the two men as they saluted before the white-haired man, though their words slightly confused Diddy. Father? How does this whole mafia thing work? You call Seabass father, yet they call you father as well, questioned Diddy as he glanced between the three in utter confusion. It may seem confusing at first, but our hierarchy is similar to a family's. Grandfather is the highest ranking. Since I'm directly below him, I call him father, and since those two are directly beneath me, they call me father while calling father grandfather, stated the white-haired man as he approached the double doors, while Diddy shook his head. Weird, but whatever, I'm not one to speak, muttered Diddy. Is father available, son? Asked the white-haired man as he glanced at one of the men guarding the double door. Grandfather is currently chatting with mother while waiting for his guest to arrive, said the man as he glanced at Diddy. I see, muttered the white-haired man as he nodded, opening the double doors and entering inside, Diddy following close behind. Once inside the room, I couldn't help but be slightly impressed by the furniture. It was even more elegant and fabulous than what any of the nobles had possession of, at least the nobles I'd encountered. At the far end of the room, there was a large desk, and sitting behind it in what looked to be a comfortable chair, was the man, Seabass visage. The instant I looked into his eyes, I saw him squint as I sensed something ethereal had left his body and headed straight towards me at speeds I couldn't react to, and the next thing I knew, I felt a terrible pain in my head, causing me to grab my head, feeling as though my head was on the verge of exploding from the throbbing pain. While I was struggling against the pain, I sensed a presence that wasn't my own inside my very mind. Though trying to pinpoint it was an incredibly difficult thing to do amidst the pain, still I did eventually find it, and unsurprisingly the presence felt just like Seabass, who was sitting in the distance. Ugh. This guy is attacking me without any warning, mused Diddy amidst the pain as he eyed Seabass and slowly approached him, causing him to be slightly taken aback. With every step I took to Seabass, the pain in my head increased, and by the time I was standing right before his desk, the pain was so intense that I could barely think. What a powerful mind you have to last this long against me. I must hand it to you, Kong, but standing before me was your downfall. The mind reigns supreme, after all, said Seabass with slight astonishment as he stood up from his seat and approached Diddy until he was directly before him. Hee, the mind does indeed reign supreme. After all, anything is possible with a strong enough will, said Diddy through his grunts of pain while clutching his head, and with incredible speed, he reached forward and grabbed Seabass by his throat, momentarily surprising him, causing his attack on Diddy to weaken for a split second, and that was all he needed. Get out of my head, yelled Diddy with anger, and from deep within the depths of the mind, his very soul to speak, a potent and unique power heeded his call as it surged forth, instantly destroying Seabass's presence inside his mind, causing him to spit blood. What? A powerful mind, muttered Seabass softly as blood leaked from his orifices before he collapsed in Diddy's grasp. Feeling Seabass's presence being forcefully driven out of my mind instantly alleviated the intense pain while also clearing up my thoughts. With the unconscious Seabass still clutched in my hands, I threw him toward the wall, causing him to be embedded in it, while I leaned against the desk and used this chance to rest since, even though it was but a short struggle, it had exhausted me even more than a drawn-out battle. Taking deep breaths, I turned around and glanced at the white-haired man along with a woman, who I didn't even notice until now, only to realize the two of them were also unconscious, the white of their eyes showing, causing me to raise an eyebrow in pure confusion as I hadn't attacked them. What's going on? Why are they already knocked out? Questioned Diddy between his heavy breathing and confusion while propping himself up with the desk, though what he didn't know was that everyone else in the base was also unconscious. I had no idea what was going on, but I didn't think about it for too long as I focused on calming my breathing into a specific pattern, a technique I had personally created after breaking down many different martial arts. Its primary purpose is to maximize one's recovery speed by breathing in a specific pattern to increase oxygen absorption, and it's pretty effective. I had taught this technique to Freya and then beat her until the brink of death since I was curious how good it actually was. I wasn't stupid enough to injure myself heavily when I had someone who'd use any opportunity given to them to kill me. The results were rather impressive, and although it wasn't some game-changing technique, it improved one's recovery ability by about 15%. Of course, I'm sure such statistics would change depending on who uses it, but either way, it's helpful no matter what. Within a matter of a few minutes, the exhaustion I felt had significantly disappeared. Well, at least the physical exhaustion. That breathing technique did little to help my mental fatigue. Ugh, said Seabass as he groaned in pain, causing Diddy to display a feral grin as he looked at him. Seeing Seabass come to rather quickly, I grinned as I approached him, and when I arrived before him, he lifted his head and looked at me, though there was no fear in his eyes, only firmness. You really pissed me off, Seabass. Attacking someone without even announcing yourself is not something I'm fond of. In fact, I want to kill you instantly, stated Diddy while grinning as he looked up at Seabass, who seemed completely unfazed. Then do so, Kong. I'm an old man, one who's not scared of death. I've lived a long enough life and experienced many things. Dying at the hands of someone with such a powerful mind isn't shameful at all, said Seabass calmly while blood leaked from his orifices as he looked at Diddy with firm eyes that displayed his tenacious will. If you wish to die so badly, why not do it yourself? Asked Diddy with a smirk as he grabbed Nagarese off his back and slammed it onto the ground beside him, causing the area to tremble slightly. You've got it wrong, young Kong. I have no desire to die without achieving my ambition, and if I could, I'd still attempt to resist, but I can't. I'm an old man with a weak body, and although I doubt you used much force when you threw me, my body is in tatters. I'm definitely seriously injured and on death's bed, replied Seabass with a slight smirk as he attempted to move his body, only for him to cough blood and grunt in pain. So what if your body is weak? Didn't you say the mind reigns supreme? Fight back with your mind, exclaimed Diddy as he brandished his staff and held it right before Seabass's chin. I also can't do that. Whatever you did to me had greatly wounded my mind even more than my body. If I hadn't retracted some of my presence in time, I would already be dead, said Seabass with a slight chuckle as he coughed more blood and eyed the staff just before his face. So what you're saying is, right now, you're nothing but a dead man breathing? Well, then I'll fix that for you, remarked Diddy with a savage grin as he unleashed his killing intent, his actions shocking the two slumbering people present awake, activating the innate survival instinct of every living being. Ugh, what happened? My head is killing me, muttered the woman sitting on a chair with gray hair wrapped in a long braid as she rubbed her head, only to get engulfed in Diddy's killing intent. F father, yelled the white-haired man while rubbing his head in pain as he glanced at Diddy and Seabass, his words prompting the woman also to look. Hearing two voices, I turned around, only to see the man that led me here and the woman. Both stood up while unholstering their weapons as they pointed them toward me, yet their bodies were covered in sweat and trembling, clearly affected by my bloodlust. Trenza, Scar, stand down. This isn't your fight, yelled Seabass while spitting blood, though the two ignored his words. If you wish to further harm father, you'll have to kill us first, yelled Trenza with shaky arms as she pointed her dual pistols at Diddy. Grand was right. We should have killed you and never allowed you to speak with father, stated Scar as he grabbed a knife from his hip and held it in a reverse grip while slowly approaching Diddy. Ho, I've defeated Seabass, so what makes the two of you think you'll have any hopes of defeating me? Though you're welcome to try, killing 1 or 3 people makes no difference to me, said Diddy with a smirk as he ignored Seabass and faced the two. Don't fight him, you can't win. Why, you'll only die a needless death, yelled Seabass, but just like previously, the two ignored his warnings and stared Diddy down. It doesn't matter whether we'll win or not. I'm not just going to stand around and watch as you die. What kind of son would I be if I just let my father die? Exclaimed Scar as he brandished his knife and dashed toward Diddy. And what about all those stories you used to tell us when we were children? All those times when you were in such a desperate situation with no chance of winning in sight, yet all because you continued to fight, you eventually won. If you didn't stop then, father, we won't stop now, exclaimed Trenza with a hardened gaze as she supported Scar by firing several times at Diddy, causing him to block the bullets with his staff. While easily deflecting the numerous bullets that the woman shot at me, I glanced at the approaching Scar as he neared me with his knife before jumping into the air. Just as he was about to stab me, I thrust my staff right for his abdomen, and although he tired blocking with his knife, it proved useless as I easily broke through it, sending him crashing into the ceiling before falling on the ground, though he was still alive if barely. Ignoring Scar, I glanced at the woman named Trenza, who had been continuously firing bullets at me from a distance, and even though she was out of my reach, I prepared to attack with my staff once more. Clutching my staff, I thrust it right toward her. Sure gone, staff version, thought Diddy as he used his staff to launch a compressed air projectile that swiftly lodged into Trenza's chest, causing her to spit out blood as she got sent crashing into the wall. I'll deal with you two later. I've got a more dangerous enemy to kill first, said Diddy, though he smirked when he heard movement coming from behind him. Sensing movement from behind me, I smirked as I turned around, only to see Seabass standing behind me with his fists raised high. No longer was he embedded into the wall. Why, you've harmed my son and daughter enough, Kong, yelled Seabass in anger, and with his broken body, he threw a punch toward the smirking Diddy. Seeing the incoming fist, I could easily dodge or block, but I opted to do neither. Taking the punch to the face, my head was slightly tilted back, but that was it. His attack didn't even harm me, though I got to hand it to him. I didn't expect he'd still be able to muster this much strength given his state. Hee, nice attack, but you should have used your ability. Didn't you say your old body was weak? Said Diddy with a smirk while eyeing Seabass, who also smirked in response. Heh, why do you think I touched you? As you know, the closer I am to my target, the stronger my ability is, stated Seabass, who suddenly widened his eyes, attacking Diddy again. Though given his state, his presence in Diddy's mind was much weaker than before, though it still caused him to grab his head in pain. Why, you're one tricky old man, I'll give you that, but this won't be enough to bring me down. After all, I can't allow the same attack to work on me twice, remarked Diddy with a grin as he began battling Seabass's presence with his mind and will, slowly pushing him back. If it was before, you might have won this exchange, but your defeat is inevitable with how injured you are, added Diddy as he continued pushing Seabass's presence out of his mind, while Seabass tried his hardest to fight back. Although Seabass was still putting up a decent fight, I eventually managed to forcefully push his entire presence out of my mind, injuring him even further as he fell to the ground. Yet even after having been defeated twice, his eyes were still as firm as before. Such a sight caused me to grin. You're powerful, Seabass. Join my crew, declared Diddy with a smirk as he sat on the ground beside Seabass, and though it may not seem like it, he was exhausted. Join my crew, Seabass, said Diddy with a grin while sitting down beside the grievously injured Seabass, who looked up at him as if he was crazy. Are you crazy? What makes you think I'll ever join your pirate group? Exclaimed Seabass in confusion and disbelief between his bouts of coughing and grunts. Besides, even if I wish to join your so-called crew, I've been defeated twice and am on the verge of dying, added Seabass as he lay in a puddle of his own blood while breathing heavily, to which Diddy smirked. I wasn't asking you, Seabass. It was an order. Either join my crew, or I'll leave you to die, remarked Diddy with a chuckle, though his words caused Seabass to squint as he eyed him. Leave me to die? That must mean you have a way to save me, don't you? Asked Seabass lightly as he spit out more blood while his weakly beating heart continued to slow down. Yes, I can save you, but as I said, if you don't wholeheartedly join my crew, I'll have no reason to save you. Besides, I don't desire someone who'll join my crew just so they won't die. Someone like that will be useless, replied Diddy with a slight grin as he rubbed his head, which emitted waves of throbbing pain. While weakly lying on the ground in a near-death state after having been defeated twice, I looked up at the one responsible for this and intently scrutinized his expression. I've been alive for a long time, and I've dealt with many people, so I'm very confident in judging someone's character. Crazy, power-hungry, battle junkie, instinct-driven, and incredibly determined. Those were some of the few characteristics I could glean from him. Following such a person would only result in a quick or gruesome death. Yet at the same time, no one can reach the top of this world without containing at least a little bit of these characteristics. Seeing this man slightly reminds me of my younger self. Now that I think about it, when did I start to lose those parts of myself? No, I hadn't lost them. I can sense them deep within me. All this time, I've been suppressing them unknowingly, mused Seabass with a glint as he looked at Diddy, while reminiscing about his younger self, the days when he desired more power and pushed his mind to its limit. I've gotten complacent. It seems creating and managing a gang has unknowingly deprived me of my true self, turning me into nothing but a man who would willingly accept death before achieving his ambition, said Seabass as he looked to the ceiling, his words slightly confusing Diddy, though he didn't bother questioning it and left him be. Tell me, Kong, what is your desire, your dream? What is the reason you fight? Asked Seabass as he turned and looked at Diddy, who displayed a feral grin. To be the strongest. I've always wished to become the strongest, the absolute pinnacle of power, and I won't stop until I reach it, stated Diddy with an unshakable will that Seabass could perceive, amazing him at Diddy's sheer determination. That's a crazy goal. To be the strongest. No one has ever achieved that. Such a dream is even more difficult than becoming the king of the pirates. What if you die during your travels? What then? Replied Seabass as he coughed blood while eyeing Diddy, who laughed at his words. Die? Ha ha ha, I refuse to die. Now that I'm given a chance to truly chase after my dream, I'll never stop, no matter what obstacles and tribulations I'll face in the future, declared Diddy with a grin while Seabass laughed at well, though given his state, he started spitting blood again. Feeling myself weaken, I deemed that my time had come, and while if it were before, I would have gladly accepted my death, yet after being defeated twice by Kong and then speaking with him, he had awakened something that's been suppressed for far too long, something that was on the verge of being lost forever. No, I don't accept this. Just like Kong, I refuse to die, not before understanding my existence, thought Seabass as the fire from his youth erupted into a blazing fire, igniting his ambition once more, practically revitalizing him. Although conversing with Kong had managed to awaken my long-lost desire, it had happened too late. I was already dying. The mind may reign supreme, but it was just as vulnerable as the body is weak. As I looked to the ceiling while breathing my last breath, I couldn't help but remember something that my late mother had said. Walking down the slums of Batarilla with a bruised and bleeding body, I turned down an alley and continued walking until I arrived at an isolated and broken-down hut that was even smaller than stables. Entering the shed, I closed the door behind me, yet it seemed I was too loud as I had awakened someone. Did those boys bully you again, Seabass? Asked a sickly and malnourished woman who turned her head and looked at the bruised, battered, and bleeding child. And no, I had tripped while walking outside. Sorry for waking you, mother, said Seabass as he approached the woman and sat beside her while lying through his teeth, and although she knew, she didn't comment on it. I am sorry, Seabass. I am sorry that you were born into poverty. I'm sorry that you were born with a weak body. I'm sorry that you're forced to care for a terrible mother like me, stated the woman quietly as she began sobbing. It's not your fault, mother. If I weren't alive, you wouldn't be in Sue Dash, said Seabass as he attempted to appease the woman, though he was interrupted by her slapping his face. Although given her sickly and weak appearance, it didn't hurt, though it did surprise him. Don't ever say that, Seabass. Why, you understand? Yelled the woman harshly as she looked at her Seabass, who was still shocked. Listen, Seabass, I'm sure you've probably wondered whether it was better to die than to live such a pathetic life like this. However, promise me you'll never willingly throw your life away. It may not seem like it, but you were born for a very special reason, and until you figure out what your existence is, promise me you'll never die, added the woman sternly as she eyed Seabass, who was trying his best not to cry. I understand, mother. Until I figure out what my existence is, I'll continue to live, replied Seabass with a nod as he wiped his tears that threatened to fall, causing the woman to smile slightly before she broke into a fit of coughing. That was the last day I spoke with my mother, as the following day, she died in her sleep, and while I was full of anguish, her words echoed in my mind, and even nearly 50 years later, her words continue to reverberate within me, spurring me to desire to live. However, just when I felt Lady Death's embrace, I suddenly sensed a substantial amount of energy flow through my body, reinvigorating my mind and body as it swiftly dispelled Lady Death's presence, causing me to open my eyes, only to see Kong with his hand placed on my chest. Hey, don't give me that look. I told you I had a way to save you, didn't I? Said Diddy with a grin as he looked at Seabass's confused expression. But I still hadn't agreed to join your crew, Dash, replied Seabass. But he wasn't allowed to finish speaking as Diddy interrupted him. And? I wasn't asking you. I was ordering you to join my crew, stated Diddy with a devilish grin as he retracted his hand while causing Seabass to release a boisterous laugh unbefitting his age. Feeling the pain in my body slowly vanish, I sat up and leaned against the wall opposite Kong as I looked at him with a large smile, who did the same, though because of his sharp fangs, he looked scary. Want to know my dream, Kong? Asked Seabass, but before Diddy could even reply, Seabass spoke anyways. My dream, my desire, is to know why I'm alive. What's the point of my existence? Is it just to live, find a woman, procreate, raise children, and then die? Or is it something different? Something more meaningful? Added Seabass with a slight chuckle as he looked at the smirking Diddy. Hee, who cares about such a thing? One's existence, the reason for living? Those things have been questioned and answered many times, yet it's always the same flimsy concept. What makes you think you'll find the correct or true answer? Replied Diddy while grinning as he stood up and looked at the much healthier Seabass. Because I must know, I will find the answer I seek, declared Seabass as he also stood up, though with much difficulty. I miss you very much, mother, and I wish to see you again, but you'll have to wait a little longer. I still haven't found out the reason for my existence, thought Seabass with closed eyes as he swiftly opened them and extended his hand toward Diddy, who was grinning. In order for me to achieve my goal, I'll need to explore and experience what the world has to offer. I've already seen everything there is to see in this kingdom, so I figure it's time to move on and broaden my horizons. While I could do it by myself, having a group would be helpful, not to mention following someone crazy like you will give me a unique view of the world, declared Seabass with an elegant smile as he shook Diddy's hand. Hee, welcome aboard the Frenzy Pirates, Seabass Visage. You're my second crewmate, said Diddy with a large feral grin. Just know, Kong, while I may have agreed to join your pirate crew, if your goal ends up interfering with my ambition, I'll do everything in my power to stop you, said Seabass solemnly as he ended the handshake, though Diddy wasn't the least bit fazed by his threat. Whatever you say, old man, replied Diddy with a smirk as he holstered his staff and turned around, eyeing the office, which had sustained quite a bit of damage. So now that you're part of my crew, what will you do with your little mafia? They won't be coming along with you. Our ship isn't large enough to house that many people, and I don't want a bunch of weaklings either. It'll give a bad name for the Frenzy Pirates if the majority of its members are weaklings, remarked Diddy as he approached the desk and sat in Seabass's chair, which was in perfect condition. That is unfortunate. It's been a very long and arduous process to create this mafia, and each member is someone handpicked by me. But I suppose since I'm about to embark on a new journey, it's only right for me to leave everything else behind, stated Seabass with a sad sigh as he slowly approached Scar and Trezza, who were lying unconscious on the ground after having been beaten by Diddy. Watching Seabass near the two people, I had expected him to possibly tend to their wounds or attempt to pick them up, but what I hadn't expected was for him to point two of his fingers up, which caused the two unconscious bodies to float off the ground and hover a few feet in place. First, it was telepathy, and now it was telekinesis. Two completely different abilities, yet they both operate off the basis of a powerful mind. Mused Diddy as he grinned in excitement at the potential of his new crew mate. Seabass, you must have eaten a devil fruit, right? Asked Diddy curiously while eyeing Seabass, who nodded in response. Yes, I ate a devil fruit many years ago, a paramecia devil fruit to be exact. It substantially enhanced my mind and gave me a few abilities, such as being able to enter someone's mind, as well as lift objects with but a thought, though I can't lift anything too heavy. I've essentially turned into a mind human, replied Seabass calmly as he opened the door to his office, only to see two guards lying unconscious on the ground. You've had such a powerful devil fruit for who knows how many years, so why are you so weak? If you had properly trained your abilities, you'd have easily defeated me. I wouldn't have even been a threat to you. Questioned Diddy in confusion, his words causing Seabass to chuckle, though he couldn't deny his words. I've wanted more strength, but unlike you, it wasn't my goal. It was just a means to survive in the Brisk Kingdom since no one cares what happens to someone like me, said Seabass lightly as he exited the room and walked down the hall while hauling two floating unconscious bodies beside him. Diddy decided to follow behind. Hee, well, I don't care what you've been through in the past. Just know now that you're a part of my crew, you'll be required to get stronger since if you start holding me back, I won't hesitate to kill you. Stated Diddy with a feral grin as he looked at Seabass while slightly unleashing his killing intent. I understand, however, you don't need to worry about me. I've lived for a long time, so I know very well how deadly the life of a pirate is. While I may have a fragile constitution, my mind is as sharp as a blade, and it'll only continue to get sharper from here on out. Wisdom comes with age, after all, said Seabass lightly with a nod as he and Diddy walked past an open door to their right, only to spot numerous unconscious mafia members, causing them both to furrow their brows in confusion. I may have a powerful mind, but I shouldn't have been able to cause this much damage to this many people from such a distance, muttered Seabass in confusion as he closed his eyes and spread his mind, also known as psionic energy, to cover the entire building, only to sense no active minds. It was me. I don't know how I did it, but when I forced you out of my mind, I somehow caused this, remarked Diddy lightly with a thoughtful expression, attempting to recall how he did this. Anyways, I'm leaving. I'm bored and still mentally drained from fighting you. My ship is at the abandoned dock east of the city. Make sure to arrive in the morning, added Diddy as he shook his head and continued down the hall, heading toward the exit, leaving Seabass alone. Once I finish everything, I'll be there, Captain, said Seabass with a slight smile as he placed his hand atop his stomach and gave a small bow before turning left, heading in a different direction. Following the scent I had left behind when I first walked through here, I made a few turns before arriving at the large metal door, only to see someone other than that large dude stationed there, though just like everyone else, they're unconscious. Exiting the underground base, I walked up the stairs and leaped into the sky as I propelled myself back towards the ship to take a nap, though while doing so, I looked down at the Red District, and unsurprisingly, there were a tremendous amount of people encircling one brothel. It didn't take a genius to figure out it was Freya's doing. Ignoring the commotion down below, I continued propelling myself through the air, and before I knew it, I had already arrived at the abandoned dock. Landing on the ground, I was about to approach my ship, but I happened to hear the sound of people nearby, prompting me to stop what I was doing and swiftly conceal my presence while blending in with the surroundings as I silently neared the noise. Once I arrived, I looked down from atop the dock only to see a small group of 5 Marines standing around my ship, slightly surprising me, though I wasn't concerned. I just didn't expect to encounter Marines in this area. Must have been scouts ordered to wander the island's edge or something similar. They were just unlucky enough to find my ship though, thought Diddy as he decided to slightly observe them, curious if he could glean any intel. Why is there a ship at this abandoned dock? It looks to be in pretty good shape as well, muttered one of the Marines with a rifle on their back in confusion as he inspected the ship by shining his lantern on it. Looks could be deceiving. It may be utterly destroyed on the inside, said a different Marine as he glanced at the ship before ignoring it. Yeah, you're probably right, because who in their right mind would just leave a perfectly good ship like this in these abandoned docks? Remarked the previous Marine as he shook his head while agreeing with his colleague. If you two don't hurry up, we'll leave you two behind and let you get eaten by whatever beasts roam out here, said a third Marine as he and 2 others turned around and eyed the 2 Marines standing by the ship. Wait, before you do so, at least check the flags. Although it's unlikely, you never know, it could be a pirate ship, yelled one of the 3 Marines as she pointed toward the mast. Yeah, better to be safe than sorry. muttered the first Marine as he lifted his lantern to point at the mast, illuminating a red flag of a monkey skull wearing a yellow and red flag. "Oh my goodness, it's actually a pirate's flag. It's a pirate ship, leader," yelled the Marine, his words causing the three to approach their location quickly. "Wait a second, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that the Jolly Roger of the newly formed Frenzy Pirates?" remarked the leader with squinted eyes as he looked at the flag blowing in the wind. Frenzy Pirates? Aren't they the pirate group that had destroyed Karate Island and Batarilla within the same week? Asked the female Marine as she nervously gulped while looking at the flag, though before anyone could respond, they suddenly heard a chuckle. "Hee hee, if even insignificant Marines like you five have heard about us, it seems I've been doing something correctly, and to think Freya said otherwise," stated Diddy with a slight chuckle, his words causing everyone to swiftly turn around, only to momentarily freeze when they laid eyes on him. "That's the captain of the Frenzy Pirates," yelled one of the Marines as he swiftly took his rifle and without any hesitation, fired upon Diddy. "I'm not in the mood to entertain you all, so just die for me," said Diddy as he caught the bullet, shocking everyone, though before they could react, all 5 Marines suddenly had a blood hole through their head, allowing one to see through their body. Watching the 5 dead Marines collapse onto the ground, I kicked them into the water before hopping onto my ship and flopping on my hammock, only for me to fall asleep a few minutes later. It's the following day morning to be exact, and currently, I'm lying on the deck, waiting for Freya and Seabass to arrive, and speaking of them, here comes one right now flying through the air, which so happened to be Seabass, though he was covered in bandages. Only a few minutes past dawn, right on time," commented Diddy with a smirk as he eyed Seabass, who softly landed on the ship and observed it. "You know what they say, Captain. First impressions are important," said Seabass with a light smile and a soft chuckle as he walked around the ship for the next few minutes, waiting for Freya to arrive. Inhaling the familiar scent of what I imagined heaven would smell like, I smirked as I opened my eyes and stood up, only to see Freya also flying through the air, heading directly toward us. "Seems like you enjoyed yourself. How many men did you devour?" remarked Diddy with a grin as he folded his arms and leaned against the ship's railing. "Quite a lot, and what about you? Did you manage to convince Seabass Visage to join your crew, or did you kill him?" asked Freya calmly as she landed on the deck, though before Diddy answered, she noticed someone exiting from the ship's steerage. Does his presence answer your question, Freya?" said Diddy with a smirk as he glanced between Freya and Seabass, who seemed to be having a staring contest. "Pleasure to make your acquaintance, Miss Freya. Although you seem to know me already, I'm Seabass Visage, former Mafia leader and now the second mate of the Frenzy Pirates," declared Seabass with an elegant posture as he neared the smiling Freya before reaching down and grabbing her hand, only to lightly kiss the back of it, causing her to smile. Someone with some class. "The pleasure's all mine, Mr. Seabass, though since we will now be sailing together for who knows how long, you can just call me Freya," replied Freya with an equally elegant smile as she retracted her hands while giving a courtesy bow, displaying her noble etiquette, slightly surprising Seabass. "No need to be so surprised. Just because our captain is a crazy lunatic doesn't mean his crew will act the same. Believe it or not, but I was actually a noble before I met Diddy," added Freya lightly with a slight frown as she glanced at the chuckling Diddy, watching their interaction. My apologies. I shouldn't have judged a book by its cover. However, you may also just call me Seabass or Visage, whichever one floats your boat," said Seabass with a laugh as he straightened his posture and fixed his suit while Freya chuckled at his subtle joke. "Seabass is fine though. For an older man, you've got quite a lot of vitality. So if you're ever feeling a little pent up or stressed, just come see me. After all, I'm very experienced in comforting a man," remarked Freya seductively as she leaned in close, pressing her voluptuous breasts against Seabass's chest while whispering in his ears, though to her surprise, he looked utterly unfazed. I appreciate the offer, Freya. However, as an old man, I ain't as energetic as I used to be. I'll tire out within the first round. Besides, I'm sure you wouldn't wish to do it with an old man like me," replied Seabass with light laughter as he politely declined Freya's offer while being completely unbothered by her seductive antics, greatly surprising her. Look at your face, Freya. You look so stupid," mentioned Diddy while laughing as he pointed at Freya's stupefied expression, which swiftly transformed into anger and confusion. Stupid captain. However, I'm curious. Not once has a man been immune to my temptations, well, except for that monster. So how'd you do it?" asked Freya as she angrily glanced at the laughing Diddy before looking at Seabass with a face full of confusion. "There is nothing special to it, Freya. It's simply because my mind is powerful enough to suppress any intimate urges my body may feel. Mind over body, that's my belief," replied Seabass with a cordial smile as he tapped his head while Freya nodded in response. "Hee, anyways, since Seabass is now a part of my crew, you won't be devouring his vitality, and if I ever find out that you did, I'm throwing you in the ocean. The same goes for you, Seabass, since you can resist her, that means you agreed to shaboink her," stated Diddy with a slight chuckle as he neared the two while eyeing them both, though Freya was still irritated with his earlier comment. "You're my captain, not my father. You don't get to decide who I can and can't sleep with," said Freya as he provocatively eyed Diddy, though that just prompted him to grin. "I'm not your father, but the Frenzy Pirates have only one rule, might makes right. And since I'm stronger than you, I get to decide what the rules are, of course. That is unless you wish to challenge me, Freya, though we both know how that'll end," stated Diddy with a feral grin, displaying his fangs as he eyed Freya, who unflinchingly looked back. "Humph, whatever," replied Freya with a huff of annoyance as she looked away, causing Diddy to calm down. "Hee, that's what I thought. Anyways, the vitality you sense within him isn't his. Most of it is mine that hadn't been used up when I transferred it over to him after nearly killing him. It should probably dissipate within a few days. One's body isn't capable of storing someone else's life force for a prolonged period of time, well, except for you," stated Diddy with a smirk as he patted Seabass's back, causing him to wince slightly in pain. "Diddy nearly killed you as well, huh?" remarked Freya as she finally took note of Seabass's numerous bandages. "To be fair, I had attacked him first for harming one of my precious members, though it seems like being nearly killed is customary if one wishes to join the Frenzy Pirates," said Seabass as he rubbed his body, which was mostly healed, leaving only soreness. "At least you weren't forced to survive 10 minutes in boiling water. Given your old age, you definitely would have died," mentioned Freya lightly, her words surprising Seabass as he suspiciously glanced at her. "The devil fruit I fed her completely fixed her body, but you should have seen her, she looked like human-shaped charcoal," said Diddy with a grin, again irritating Freya, while Seabass nodded his head, still too shocked at such revelations to appropriately respond. "Though, at least now I know why you suddenly attacked me," muttered Diddy to himself. "So then, what will we do now that we're all here? Are we still intending to attack this place or not?" questioned Freya as she folded her arms while sitting atop a barrel in the corner, just by the stairs leading to the upper deck. "Attack Brisk Kingdom? That's absolutely crazy. Don't you know they're one of the 170 kingdoms affiliated with the WG?" remarked Seabass with widened eyes, receiving shock after shock as he glanced at the smirking Diddy. "Ha ha ha, of course, I know they're a part of the WG, but doesn't that make it even more interesting? Attacking a kingdom is already insane, but attacking one associated with the WG, not to mention with only 3 people, how could I possibly pass up such a heaven-sent opportunity?" declared Diddy with his chaotic laughter and a feral grin as he eyed the shocked Seabass and the indifferent Freya. It seems like I had underestimated how crazy you're. I had already thought destroying small cities or towns was your limit, to think you'd go after whole kingdoms next," said Seabass as he sighed while looking at the sky. "Don't tell me you're scared, Seabass. That'd be very unbecoming of a member of the Frenzy Pirates," remarked Diddy while grinning as he blasted Seabass with his killing intent, though it affected the man little. While it's a little shocking, given your past history, it was actually something I had predicted when I learned you were here, so I'm not that worried, nor am I scared. Granted though, it was an implausible prediction on my part," replied Seabass as he regained his bearings and tightened his tie while glancing at Diddy without an ounce of fear, causing him to grin while Freya smirked. "Hee, then what are we waiting for? Let's undock the ship and get going," declared Diddy with a feral grin as he quickly unhooked the ropes from the dock. Once the ship wasn't connected to the dock anymore, I went to the front of the boat and grabbed the hull as I started powerfully kicking the air behind me, creating miniature explosions every time my foot collided against the air, pushing the boat out of the dock. With the ship entirely out of the pier, I started kicking at an angle, causing the front of the ship to turn, and I only stopped once we were facing the correct direction, which was towards the west of the island. Landing back on the boat beside Freya, who was already sitting in the captain's, steering the ship, while Seabass was unfurling the sails, though he was using his mind to do so. "Also, just so you know, Freya, I'm not immune to your temptation. Many times throughout the last 5 years, I was very close to losing all reason and pouncing on you," remarked Diddy calmly with a smile as he stood beside Freya. "If that's true, why hadn't I once ever seen you struggling to resist my temptations? I've tried to seduce you many times, but they never worked. It was as if you were completely immune to my attempts. Asked Freya with suspicion as she glanced at Diddy while steering the ship. Hee, because I was hiding it. I knew if you ever realized that your abilities were working on me, it was only a matter of time until you turned me into one of your little slaves. So I always hid it by forcefully suppressing, and boy was it difficult. Replied Diddy, his words filling Freya with numerous emotions, though the most potent one was anger followed by bitterness. So you're saying I was that close to being able to kill you, and the reason you're still alive isn't necessarily because of only you but also because of my negligence. Is that what you're implying? Remarked Freya quietly as she gripped the helm tightly, causing cracks to emerge. Yes. Said Diddy with a nod as he glanced at Freya, who seemed to be on the verge of exploding in anger. So then, why tell me now if that's the case? And if you were in such a dangerous position back then, why didn't you kill me? Questioned Freya as she eyed Diddy, while suppressing the anger she had for herself. I told you now, simply because I'm confident that even with you knowing your abilities work on me, I'll be able to resist them easily. Why didn't I kill you? Well, because I saw it as mental training. Do you know how difficult it was to resist the desire to ravage your body? Resisting your temptations was definitely the most difficult training I've ever done. Yet it was all worth it since my mind and will would have been too weak without it, and Seabass would have killed me. Remarked Diddy with a grin, though his words only deepened Freya's anger. After my little talk with Freya, we descended into silence, mostly because she seemed to be full self-loathe. But either way, it didn't matter to me as I walked down the stairs arriving at the deck while heading toward the front of the boat, passing by Seabass in the process, though he was looking at Brisk Kingdom to our right, seemingly deeply contemplating something. Leaning against the front of the ship's railing, I patiently waited, something I wouldn't say I liked doing, for the ship to sail around to the west of the island, where the majority of the Marines were stationed for defense, which was a little dumb in my opinion, to have most of your troops in one area, but I suppose guarding the main port to the island would make sense. Freya, make sure to take a big arc. I don't want to come in at an angle. I wish to attack them head first. It'll be much more fun that way. Ordered Diddy with a smirk, to which Freya responded by steering the ship away from the island. Sometime later, once our ship was quite a distance away from the island, Freya did a U-turn, turning our boat until it was pointing directly at the island as we headed straight towards the Brisk Kingdom dock. Though since Freya was required to sail pretty far away to successfully make the turn without getting discovered, it would take a few minutes before we arrived within range of fire from the few Marine ships patrolling the surrounding waters. Hee, this will be fun. Thought Diddy with a feral grin as he eyed the island several kilometers in the distance. While the frenzy pirates were heading towards the Brisk Kingdom docks to launch a raid, the unsuspecting Marines were currently patrolling the surrounding water, or they should have been. On one of the biggest Marine ships, known as the battleship, second only to a destroyer which is used in severe situations, such as a buster call, at the top of the mast, where the lookouts are stationed, a little game of poker was happening. Haha, I win, Royal Flush. Yelled a Marine in victory as he slammed 5 cards, consisting of an ace, king, queen, jack, and a 10, onto a large box, causing 4 other Marines to release a defeated sigh. Damn it, said a Marine as he threw down his cards and huffed angrily while eyeing the first Marine. TCH, what unfortunate luck, and I had a straight flush, muttered a different Marine as she set her cards down in defeat. Well, I didn't expect to win, but I don't like repeatedly losing to the same person, remarked another Marine as he laid his cards down while smoking a cigarette. Told you, I'm the king of poker. I've never once lost a game of poker, and I never will, said the first Marine with a large smile as he grabbed all the cards from the various players and began shuffling. Alright, I agreed to play with you 4, so can we return to our duties? If our superior finds out we were playing poker on the job, do you know how screwed we'll all be? Exclaimed the last Marine as he stood up and pointed out to sea, coincidentally pointing directly at a small incoming ship. It's fine, calm down. What pirates would be stupid enough to actually sail near Brisk Kingdom? Even some of the most renowned and infamous pirates wouldn't attack a kingdom associated with the world government. It's suicidal, after all, remarked the second Marine dismissively, as he grabbed his new hand of cards while glancing at the sea, only for his eyes to widen when he spotted a small ship. What the? Remarked the second Marine as he quickly stood up and grabbed his binoculars while zooming in on the ship, his actions taking everyone by surprise. Are my eyes deceiving me, or is that actually a pirate ship? Asked the first Marine as he and everyone else grabbed their binoculars, inspecting the ship. Quickly sound the alarm, yelled the last Marine while running toward a bell with a rope and shaking it, alerting everyone on the deck as they spurred into action. I might be mistaken, but I've seen that flag somewhere, muttered the third Marine with a frown while eyeing the ship's Jolly Roger as he quickly rummaged through his satchel before taking out a newspaper. Yeah, I knew I'd seen it somewhere before. That's the Jolly Roger for the newly formed Frenzy Pirates, added the fourth Marine as he and everyone else were swiftly filled with nervousness. Anyways, we have no reason to be so nervous. Rear Admiral Hina arrived to restock on supplies. With her presence, those pirates will be easily defeated, stated the first Marine, his words soothing everyone. Yeah, everything will be fine, muttered the third Marine, though she still felt uneasy for some reason. Hee, it's about damn time, stated Diddy with a smirk as he unholstered ONEPIECE and eyed the incoming Marine battleship, followed by several smaller but also deadly ships. Just as I said that, I heard loud flapping, followed by someone speedily rushing right past me, only to spot Freya angrily flying toward the ships while displaying her potent bloodlust. Ho, no need to wait, Captain. I can tell you're quite eager to engage them. Allow me to protect the ship in your stead. Even with the vitality you had given me, I'm still an old man. It'll take longer for me to heal fully. So until then, I'll like to avoid confrontation, though I'm confident in being able to protect this ship from cannon fire, remarked Seabass, chuckling as he approached Diddy with his hands behind his back while gazing upon the foremost battleship that had just shot cannonballs. If you say so, I won't stay a second longer. Just know if I return to a damaged ship, I will beat you up again, replied Diddy with a grin while looking at Seabass before jumping into the air and powerfully kicking, propelling himself through the sky as he passed by the numerous cannonballs. While chasing behind Freya, who had just landed on the closest Marine ship, I looked behind me as I was curious about how Seabass would stop the cannonball since I doubted he was currently strong enough to stop a cannonball. But then again, I suppose I shouldn't have expected to see anything special because whenever they neared our ship, their trajectory would suddenly be diverted towards the water instead before quickly exploding afterward. Diverting them is much easier than outright stopping them. At least I no longer have to stay back and protect my ship while Freya goes ahead, mused Diddy with a smile as he quickened his speed while heading toward the same ship as Freya. Once I arrived at the closet ship, I looked down and spotted Freya from up above. Yet instead of seeing the usual sight of her indulging in carnal pleasure, she was currently causing mass destruction as she killed everyone in sight with her deadly sharp elongated nails, which were like mini swords, that sliced right through humans like they were never there, to begin with. With a smirk, I kicked off the air, propelling myself towards the ships, crashing ONEPIECE right into a Marine that was trying to sneak attack Freya from behind. Hee, you owe me one, Freya, said Diddy with a grin while squatting atop ONEPIECE, which was embedded into the body of a dead Marine, while eyeing the hundreds of Marine soldiers. I knew he was there, I was just about to kill him, but someone interfered and beat me to it, replied Freya with a raspy voice as she brandished her nails while standing beside Diddy as armed enemies completely surrounded the two. You always use your bewitching abilities of a succubus to defeat your enemies, but isn't this way more enjoyable? What's more fun than crushing hordes of enemies with your overwhelming power and technique? Exclaimed Diddy with a feral grin as he hopped off his staff and landed on the ground beside Freya, his actions causing the Marines to flinch nervously. I'm not a psycho like you, Diddy. I'm merely releasing some anger, that's it, stated Freya as he glanced at Diddy before shaking her head. Hee, whatever you say, but I find you to be just as equally psychotic as me, muttered Diddy as he brandished his staff while baring his fangs at the hundreds of enemies. Attack! Yelled someone among the hundreds of Marines loudly, his words igniting the morale of everyone as they raised their weapons into the air and charged toward the two. Seeing the incoming horde of enemies, I smirked as I threw my bowstaff into the sky while getting into stance to use one of my personally created attacks. Freya, on the other hand, sprouted wings from her back once more as she flew up into the air and expanded her wings to their maximum. Beast shockwave, said Diddy with a grin as a large amount of electricity covered his right arm before punching the right side of the horde, causing a large wave of lightning to release from his arm. Hellish winds, said Freya as she powerfully flapped her wings, which were on fire, creating a large gust of scorching wind that headed for the left side of the horde. When our attacks hit, the right side of the Marines were stopped in their tracks as they started spazzing out while the lighting arced from body to body, frying them one at a time until they dropped dead, leaving behind a burnt smell. Freya's attack caused the left side of the Marine horde to be sent flying through the sky as her winds managed to create a miniature tornado. However, while that wasn't so dangerous, the tornado was fueled by blazing hot air, which scorched their skin, burning them until they either passed out or died. Ha, what fun! Yelled Diddy with a grin as he outstretched his hand, catching his staff before it hit the ground. As Freya and Diddy caused chaos and mass destruction, they flew ship to ship after destroying the previous ones, creating a chain of destruction everywhere they went while they slowly but surely neared Brisk Kingdom. No one was able to stop them. Not even the few captain-ranked marines that intercepted them could slow them down. While the captain and vice-captain were causing wanton destruction, the second mate of the frenzy pirates, Seabass Visage, was calmly sitting at the helm as he sailed the ship through the waters, occasionally passing by a marine battleship that was either on fire or in the process of sinking. The area that surrounded those ships were littered with hundreds of corpses and detached limbs, while the water also started to take on a slight tint of red from the large amounts of blood. However, while those events were happening out at sea on the island, inside Brisk Kingdom, a conversation was happening between Rear Admiral Hina, who had docked not even 3 hours ago, and the captain of the Brisk Kingdom outpost, though funnily enough, the topic was about the ones attempting to raid Brisk Kingdom. "So those two haven't shown their faces here, Captain Ness?" asked Hina in slight interest while sitting opposite Captain Ness, who was currently at his desk. "No, they haven't, though such news shouldn't be surprising. Any pirate dumb enough to raid Brisk Kingdom won't live for much longer anyways. Us Marines will make sure of that," said Ness solemnly while looking up at Hina, though his voice was respectful since she was his superior. "You're not wrong, but pirates are a bunch of lawless beings, so don't put it past them to attack the Brisk Kingdom, no matter how unlikely it is to happen, especially those frenzy pirates," remarked Hina calmly while looking at Ness, who nodded in understanding. "I understand, Rear Admiral Hina. I'll make sure to take note of that and not get complacent just because this is Brisk Kingdom," replied Ness seriously. "Speaking of the frenzy pirates, I imagine you hadn't had the chance to confront them yet. Otherwise, they would have already been locked up," added Ness with a slight chuckle, though his words did cause Hina to frown. "Unfortunately, no, Hina hasn't had the opportunity to confront them, though don't underestimate them. They managed to destroy Karate Island in one night. Such a feat speaks volumes of strength. Not to mention Captain Leaf, that guarded Batarilla, was said to be defeated in one attack by the mink known as DIDDY Kong," stated Hina seriously, her words causing Ness to be taken aback. "I knew about the destruction of Karate Island, but defeating a captain in one attack, that's news to me. It seems I've been underestimating pirates too much," remarked Ness with an ugly expression while frowning, knowing that his chances of beating Diddy were slim to none. Nodding at Ness's words of self-reflection, I was about to respond, though not even a second later, the doors to the office were busted open as a frightened and distraught Marine soldier ran towards us. "Speak, soldier. It must have been very important if you were required to barge into my office without my authorization," commanded Ness sternly with a frown as he eyed the sweating and panting Marine, a bad feeling welling up within his heart. "They attacked, Sea Captain Ness," said the soldier while heavily panting, though his words only served to confuse Ness while Hina lit a cigarette and frowned. "Someone attacked? What pirate is bold enough to attack us? Do they not know that this island is Brisk Kingdom?" questioned Ness as he stood up with a furious expression and approached the Marine soldier. "It's the ones you warned us about Sea Captain," replied the Marine as he struggled to look at Ness's face, though before he could finish speaking, someone interrupted him. "Frenzy pirates," remarked Hina, glancing at the Marine with a frown as she puffed out smoke, while Ness's eyes widened in surprise. "Why yes, our Rear Admiral Hina. The frenzy pirates have attacked, and they're nearing the island as we speak," exclaimed the Marine soldier as Ness broke from his stupor and clutched his sheathed sword while Hina stood up, both preparing to leave. "Let us go, Captain Ness. From what Hina knows about the frenzy pirates, the ships won't be enough to stop them. Hina will confront them herself," stated Hina with a frown as she exited the office while going down the Marine outpost. Ness and the Marine followed closely behind. "Marine, tell me the status of the battle," ordered Ness with a hardened gaze while following behind Hina. "I am from the coast station, so it took me a few minutes to get here, but from what I know, 6 out of the 14 ships, 3 of which are battleships, have all been destroyed, Captain Ness. The worst news is that they somehow fly from ship to ship, killing every Marine aboard before finally sinking the ship," declared the Marine as he slightly trembled, remembering when Diddy looked directly at him as he watched the two slaughter his colleagues through binoculars from a lighthouse. What?" exclaimed Ness in shock, the news not only filling him with fury at the loss of his men and so many deaths, but also fear, knowing that he could very well be next. "Any information about their abilities? Are either of them possible devil fruit users?" asked Hina, her managing to break Ness from his second stupor of the day while the Marine soldier nodded. The captain seems to be able to wield lightning or electricity. However, the woman is capable of sprouting wings from her back and catching them on fire, while also turning her hands into very long, sharp claws. Replied the marine hurriedly, though when he spoke of Freya, his eyes showed desire. Minks are known to be able to wield electricity, so that's not surprising. However, while Hina can't be sure given the numerous tribes that exist in this world, the woman most likely has eaten a Zoan devil fruit. Stated Hina with a frown and thoughtful expression, though she wasn't talking to anyone specifically, merely thinking out loud. Finally, exiting the outpost, which is situated just beside the Brisk Kingdom's main dock, my frown intensified when I noticed the numerous sinking and burning ships in the distance as I eyed the final ship that had just been destroyed. Seeing two silhouettes fly into the air from the wrecked ship, my gaze hardened as I looked at the two approaching the island, and not even a moment later, the mink who was holding a bow staff suddenly turned his in my direction, causing the two of us to make eye contact. While intently eyeing Kong, my brows furrowed when I saw him occasionally kicking the air, causing me to frown as I thought back to what Captain Leaf had told me. I didn't believe him at first when he told me Kong used Tekai, but seeing him masterfully use Jeppo, I've no doubt he somehow got his hands on the 6 Rokushiki techniques. Thought Hina with an intense frown before shifting her focus toward Freya, who was currently sporting an angry expression. Besides her perfect appearance, godly beauty, and the things the marine had informed me of, I couldn't discern anything else unique about her. 2-on-1. Hina will have a tough time, muttered Hina with a sigh as she walked alongside Ness, who had just arrived, followed by numerous marines with cannons, rifles, pistols, swords, and any other form of weapon. Once I arrived about 20 or so meters away from the outpost, standing just before the docks, which were now empty as we had evacuated nearby citizens, I stopped walking and stood my ground while looking up into the sky, eyeing Kong and Freya, who both descended to the ground before eventually landing several meters before us. Men, ready your aim and prepare to fire on my word, yelled Ness as he raised his hand while eyeing Diddy and Freya in the near distance. Landing on the ground alongside Freya, I couldn't help but smirk as I eyed the numerous marines that were aiming their weapons at us, ready to fire on a moment's notice. However, before I let them do such a thing, I set loose my killing intent, causing the man who just spoke to flinch while the 100 or so marines started sweating in fear. Some even accidentally shot, though because of their intense trembling they all missed. Hee, look at what they prepared for us, Freya. A bunch of weaklings, well except for one, who is decently strong, remarked Diddy with a grin, displaying his fangs as he observed the group before his eyes focused on Hina, who stood at the forefront. Can I attack yet? I'm still very angry, said Freya with an angry frown while intently eyeing Hina. Have some patience, Freya, you're acting like me, replied Diddy, though his remark sparked Freya's anger, causing her to attack him with her wing, though it was easily blocked. TCH, I'm nothing like you, stated Freya seriously as small flames escaped her mouth while eyeing Diddy, who had used his tail to block her wing. Chuckling, I released my hold of Freya's wing before focusing on the current enemies before us. Walking forward, I ignored everyone else and eyed the woman at the front. Seeing the emblems on your marine coat, you must be a Rear Admiral. Rear Admiral Hina, I presume? Asked Diddy with a grin as he stood just 2 meters before Hina while eyeing her. Yes, and Hina's the person who'll defeat you and make you repent for your atrocious deeds, replied Hina with a frown as she dropped her cigarette and snuffed it out with her heel. You're funny one. I don't mind being defeated, but I'll never repent for anything. I don't believe in a god after all, remarked Diddy with a chuckle. After my remark, she didn't respond and dashed right for me as she extended her arm to her side, while I, on the other hand, just stood still and watched her, curious about her devil fruit ability since she carried a similar scent to Seabass, Freya, and a few others I've encountered in the past. Once she reached me, she clotheslined me, yet instead of getting hit, her arm went right through me while leaving behind an iron rod that trapped my arms. It was surprising, but I wasn't given any time to relax as she kicked my legs, causing her legs to go right through mine, once again caging me, trapping my legs. What are you waiting for? Fire. He is still very much a threat, even with him being caged, yelled Hina as she turned around and eyed Ness. Why, you heard her. Fire, stated Ness as he lowered his raised hands, causing all the trembling marines, who had regained their confidence from Hina's display of might, to unleash an onslaught of bullets, cannonballs, and even explosives. What fun, muttered Diddy with a grin just as he got bombarded with various attacks. Even though my limbs were constricted, I could still use Tekai, completely ignoring most of their attacks, though the explosives did hurt a little. Not only did I have to worry about the flames from the explosion, but the shockwaves as well, since Tekai was utterly defenseless against that. However, other than slightly injuring me, the Marine's attacks didn't do much. The thing that hurt me the most were the shockwaves, yet they were far too weak to do any actual damage to me, at most making me feel uncomfortable as they caused my organs to slightly shake, though this did get me thinking about a new technique. If I could use Tekai on not only my muscles and skin but also on my organs, and possibly even bones, it would greatly enhance my defense capabilities. I'm definitely skilled enough in the Rokushiki to do something like that. The thing that's holding me back is the control of my body. I need to somehow gain absolute control over my body. If I can do that, it will bring about several other benefits and greatly increase how to effectively and efficiently use my strength. Pondered Diddy seriously with his eyes closed while still getting hit with numerous explosions and bullets, creating a large smoke cloud that concealed his figure. "Stop!" yelled Ness as he raised his hand, causing the numerous Marines to halt their fire as they all nervously looked at the large smoke cloud, though after eyeing it for several seconds and seeing no movement, they all released a sigh. "Stop paying attention to my stupid captain. As much as I would love to see it happen, you can't beat him. You're just wasting your time," remarked Freya with a frown as she speedily flew toward Hina while brandishing her long nails, though she blocked her attack by creating an iron rod from her body, causing the two to enter a struggle. Even if he isn't dead, Hina immobilized him. He'll be a much easier enemy to deal with. Seeing how you don't seem to like him, why don't you stop this futile nonsense and help Hina take him down? Stated Hina with a frown while furrowing her brows as she looked at Freya, who brandished her other hand. "It's not a bad offer, but unfortunately, with just the two of us, I don't have much confidence in beating him. Besides, he won't stay immobilized for long, and there he goes," replied Freya while attacking Hina's iron bar with her other hand, flinging her a few meters back as she looked at the large smoke cloud, her ear twitching. Breaking the two iron bars off me while still concealed behind the smoke, I threw one of them toward Freya and the other one toward Hina. Freya simply dodged it, while the other hit Hina, though it seemed to cause no damage as it was absorbed back into her body. "Hee, what the hell are you doing, Freya? You know I don't like it when someone interrupts my fun," said Diddy with a feral grin as he used Jeppo with his hands, causing a large chunk of the smoke cloud to disperse, revealing his slightly injured body, though that alone was enough to discourage everyone, including Hina. "How about next time, don't just stand there with your eyes closed, and then maybe I won't interfere with your fights. Besides, fighting her will ease a significant amount of my anger, so let me fight her instead," replied Freya with a frown while two large horns sprouted from her forehead as she ignored Diddy and focused on the incoming Hina, who was attempting to take advantage of their discord. Looking at the incoming woman, I brandished my nails, which might as well be claws from how sharp they are. Spreading my wings, I flapped and quickly neared the woman. Yet while doing so, she clasped her hands together, creating a massive dome cage as she attempted to trap me inside, though before she could, I made a sharp right, evading the iron cage. However, while flying around her cage, I was forced to stop myself as my stupid captain had just launched a blade of wind toward me, and if I had continued flying, I would have been sliced in half. Angrily eyeing Diddy, I nearly changed my target from Hina to him, but doing so would just result in being brutally beaten by him. "Ho, when did I agree to let you fight her, Freya?" asked Diddy with a smirk as he retracted his leg. "TCH, why do you care so much? She isn't even strong enough to warrant a good fight from you, so stop being annoying and let me fight her," stated Freya angrily as she was forced to block an attack from Hina since she was too busy focusing on Diddy. "I think you're underestimating Hina a little too much. Hina didn't just get to her position as a rear admiral just because of Hina's appearance, after all," remarked Hina as she did a front flip off of Freya's nails and attacked her with an iron whip, which Freya nimbly evaded with the help of her wings. "Heh, I can obviously see that, but unlike you, I've lived with that beast for almost half of his life. After him, no one knows his strength better than me, and one thing I can certainly say is, you're not even close to his power," remarked Freya with a frown as she gritted her teeth, recalling the night she witnessed a transformed Diddy. "Who knows how powerful that monster has truly become? I'm thankful the full moon only occurs once a month," thought Freya in relief as she remembered how utterly helpless she was against a transformed Diddy, which was a few years ago, and he's only gotten stronger since then. Shaking my head to get rid of such distractive thoughts, I focused back on the battle on hand as I clawed at Hina while opting to avoid her attacks if possible rather than blocking them since I wasn't nearly as physically strong as Diddy, and while I'm confident I'd be able to break out of her iron bars, it won't be as quick. I suppose you're right, Freya. Hina's decently powerful, but it's not enough to really spur my desire to fight her. Besides, it'll have a bigger impact if the second-in-command defeats Hina and not the captain," said Diddy while nodding with a thoughtful expression as he watched the battle between Freya and Hina. Hee, since you're doing that, I'll have you take care of things here. I'm going to head deeper into the Brisk Kingdom. Since it's a kingdom, it should have an army, right? It's been enough time. I hope they mobilized them. Added Diddy with a smirk as he headed deeper into the city, while muttering the last part, though his destination required him to pass by Ness and his soldiers. Ness, stop him. Hina has her hands full. We can't allow such a dangerous pirate into the city filled with innocent civilians, no matter what. Yelled Hina with an ugly expression as she attempted to lunge forwards and stop him, but Freya always intercepted her before she could. We understand. You heard her, men. Fire, and don't stop firing until you've run out of ammo. We must stop this pirate even at the cost of our lives. Declared Ness as he raised his sword high and dashed toward Diddy, while the Marines behind him began to attack while shouting. As much as I hate him, he's my captain, and he's given me the order to deal with things here, so I will. Muttered Freya with a frown while sighing as she kicked Hina, and though she blocked it, the force had still flung her several meters away. Turning around and eyeing the numerous Marines behind me, I lightly smiled while using the deadly bewitching abilities of a succubus, causing them to come to a halt as they focused on me instead. You all just wait right there until I've defeated Hina. If you do so, I'll come and give you all a lovely reward. What do you say? Said Freya with a lovely smile in an incredibly seductive voice as her words entered the ears of the men and women present, enchanting their minds and turning them practically into slaves driven by their lust for her. Oh, of course, Mistress Freya. We wouldn't dare to disobey your words. Yelled Ness with a zealous expression as he and everyone else stopped what they were doing and stood still, almost like statues, while eyeing Freya up above. Fufu, now then, you better not defy my words. I don't like disobeying slaves. Said Freya with a slight smirk as she turned her head and eyed Hina, who was noticeably blushing while looking at Freya, though she seemed still in control of herself. I expected as much. My abilities aren't nearly as effective when used against women. Now let us continue the fight. I still need to let off some steam. Added Freya as she licked her lips and charged toward Hina. While charging toward Hina, I nimbly evaded several iron bars she launched at me from her arms, and when I got close to her, she created a shield by weaving numerous iron bars together. Yet instead of directly attacking it, I powerfully flapped my wings and darted right into the sky. Once decently high in the sky, I turned around and flew right toward her while spinning as I built momentum for my attack, spinning so fast that, with the help of my ability, it enabled me to engulf my foot in flames just before I attacked. Hell's Heel, the instant my foot collided with Hina's self-made shield. The impact created a large gust of wind as I nearly broke through her melting iron shield, though much to my annoyance, she held firm and quickly repaired the shield before pushing me back while several iron bars shot from the shield as they followed after me. Dodging through the air, I landed back on the ground as I clawed at an incoming iron bar, slicing right through it before eyeing her in the distance. You're quite powerful, but Hina can't afford to waste time. Hina must defeat you and stop your captain before he causes too much destruction. Said Hina with a hardened gaze as she appeared from behind the iron shield while disrobing her marine coat. Heh, I could say the same for you. However, you won't beat me, and even if you somehow happen to, you'll be far too exhausted and injured to even fight him. Stated Freya with a slight smile as a black tail with a sharp spade tip emerged from her tailbone and swayed about in the wind. This should be enough power to defeat her. Thought Freya lightly, signifying she was still holding back, but by how much? Only she and Diddy knew the answer to that. Devilish wings spreading my wings and covering them in flames. I speedily propelled myself toward Hina while creating a fire trail behind me, catching her slightly off guard with my sudden speed. However, just as she stated before, she didn't achieve her status merely because of her appearance. Seeing her quickly create an iron net with her extended arm, I didn't dodge it and instead curled into a ball while my flaming wings covered me. Colliding with the net, I busted right through it before swiftly unfurling myself as I slashed at the retreating Hina, tearing open her suit and slicing her skin, drawing blood. If you can't even deal with me, you've got no business trying to capture my captain. Said Freya as she eyed Hina's chest, which had 4 long bloody gashes. Looking at the unresponsive Hina, I frowned when I noticed her left foot seemed to be missing, and not even a second later, I looked to my right with widened eyes as I saw a giant ball of iron heading right toward me. I attempted to block the sneak attack, but I was too late, causing me to be sent crashing through several streetlights before I finally stopped myself. As Hina said before, don't underestimate Hina. Remarked Hina as she retracted the giant ball of iron before lifting her left leg from the ground, revealing a hole. TCH, you lucky bitch. muttered Freya with a frown as she stood up and approached Hina while wiping blood leaking from her nose. Note, to give a good idea of Hina's strength, she's defeated Mr. Tuban Clay 2 separate occasions. While Freya and Hina were battling not too far away from the dock, Seabass was currently navigating through the coast of the island, which was filled with corpses, debris from sunken ships, and destroyed ships. However, amidst all of that destruction, death, and chaos, there were still a few Marines left alive. As I sailed through the battlefield, I was slightly in awe by the sheer destruction Freya and Captain had caused. I've lived for a relatively long time compared to the two, but I've spent all of my life in Briss Kingdom. Not once have I witnessed so much destruction and death occur in just mere minutes. Seeing what kind of people I've decided to associate with was truly eye-opening. Seems I'll need to quickly increase my strength if I wish to keep up with those two. I suppose I'm lucky the brain is very adaptable. Otherwise, it would be impossible for these old bones to keep up with such youthful and energetic companions. Remarked Seabass lightly while sitting at the helm as he observed the surroundings, only for him to notice a few boats in the distance. There are people still alive? Thought Seabass as he eyed the few boats filled with several Marines seemingly scouring the coast for possible survivors. While the Marines were now my enemies, well, they've always been my enemies, but it's pretty easy to keep them at bay, having lived in the underworld for several decades. One thing you learn is everything, and everyone has a price. If something and someone doesn't, you're simply not offering enough. Shaking my head, I looked away, ignoring them as I intended to dock the ship, though it seemed like they must have noticed the boat as they started heading right for me. Given their rowing boat, they usually wouldn't have been able to catch this ship, but as I was sailing through debris-filled water and since I was near an island, I had furled the sails, which massively reduced my speed, ultimately allowing the boats full of Marines to swiftly arrive within a few minutes. Looking down at the deck, I saw a hook get thrown up before latching itself around the ship's railing. Shortly after, Marines began climbing the rope as they boarded the ship. "Leader, what are we doing here? Shouldn't we be out searching for possible survivors?" asked a young Marine as he climbed aboard the boat and looked around. "We've been searching for 10 minutes and haven't found a single survivor. They're all dead. Forget about them. Instead, we should capture this ship. If we do that and hand it over to Captain Ness or Rear Admiral Hina, we'll be promoted for my contribution," stated an older Marine with a sly smile as he walked about the deck, both entirely oblivious of Seabass up above. But leader, just because we haven't found survivors doesn't mean there aren't any. There were thousands of soldiers on those ships. It's impossible for them to have all been killed so quickly," replied the Marine passionately, though all that earned from him was a glare from the older man. "Shut up. Because you're young, I'll let it slide this time, but you must face reality. Do you think the higher-ups actually care about us? No. All they care about is power, control, and wealth. To them, we are nothing but easily replaceable cannon fodder born every 16 years. Yelled the older Marine as he looked at the several other Marines who had climbed aboard the ship. "Ho ho, what a riveting speech, my good sir. Your analysis couldn't be more correct. The people in power don't care about the ones beneath them as long as they continue to stay in power," stated Seabass with a slight chuckle from the upper deck as he clapped while looking down upon the several Marines, who were surprised by his appearance. What the? I thought there were only supposed to be 2 members of the Frenzy Pirates," exclaimed a Marine fearfully as he pointed at Seabass. "Hey, calm down, scaredy cat. It's merely an injured old man. It's almost impossible for there to be a weaker opponent," remarked another Marine as he scoffed, his words causing everyone to relax. Well, except for the older Marine as he looked at Seabass with eyes full of fear. "Haha, sorry about that. I was merely freaked out that someone else was aboard the ship. I thought it might have been someone dangerous," said the previous Marine as he rubbed his head awkwardly. "So, who wants to take care of this old man?" "Not me. I'm searching the ship. A pirate ship has got to have valuables, right? I'm with him." "Me too. Make that 3. Get out of the way. Let me through," yelled the older Marine fearfully while pushing his colleagues out of the way as he attempted to jump overboard. "Ho ho, where are you going, my friend? I, unfortunately, can't just allow you to escape after giving such an excellent speech to these ignorant young men. Knowing my captain, he may very well beat me up again," said Seabass with a chuckle as he used his telekinesis, picking up the older Marine, who was jumping overboard, shocking everyone present. "Whoa. Leader, how are you doing that?" exclaimed a rather stupid Marine, causing everyone else to think the same as they eyed the older Marine in awe. "Why, you fools. Don't you know who that man is?" yelled the floating older marine as he pointed his trembling hand at Seabass. No. Why would we know about some random old man? Yeah, you need to calm down, leader. We know you're old too, but it's 1 versus 7. Besides, you can float, so how could we possibly lose? No need to be so agitated, my friend. My wanted poster has long since stopped circulating within the Brisk Kingdom. It's only a given that these young men don't know about me. Though I'm surprised I've encountered someone who still knows me, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Seabass Visage, former leader of the Elegant Mafia and current second mate of the Frenzy Pirates. Declared Seabass as he grabbed his wanted poster and dropped it to the several marines below before slightly bowing. Seabass grandfather Visage, bounty, 5 to 50 million berries. Yelled one of the marines in shock as his trembling hand held Seabass's bounty. Ho ho, even after several decades, it seems like I've still got it. Now then, as I've been entrusted with protecting this ship by my captain, I'll have to kill you all, said Seabass with light laughter and a friendly expression while eyeing the several scared marines below, keeping the older man afloat. TCH, he may have had a bounty of 50 million berries, but so what? He's nothing but an injured old man. How can we be frightened? I refuse to believe the 7 of us can't defeat this crippled old man. Besides, did he not just declare himself a member of the Frenzy Pirates? Aren't we Marines? Our duty is to capture and kill lawless pirates that bring nothing but death and destruction everywhere they go. Now who's with me? Exclaimed one of the Marines passionately with anger while he eyed his scared colleagues, causing them to slowly regain their courage. Why yeah, you're right. What am I scared for? We can easily take down such a defenseless old man, said the Marine holding Seabass's bounty with renewed vigor as he ripped it into pieces before throwing it overboard. Well then, what are we waiting for, men? Yelled a different Marine as he unsheathed his sword and raised it into the air, igniting the morale of everyone present. Ha, youth, what a wonderful thing to have. Unfortunately though, what you don't learn until you've grown into an old man like me who has experienced many things is that being hot-blooded isn't always a good thing. Being calm and collected is just as good if not better in most situations, said Seabass with a sigh while shaking his head before focusing back on the Marines as his gaze took on a more dignified expression. I may still be injured from yesterday's fight, but I could still easily deal with a couple of hot-blooded youths. Psionic array, launching something akin to invisible ethereal arrows filled with the power of my mind. They entered the 6 young Marines, and they weren't even given a chance to react before they lifelessly collapsed on the ground as they started frothing at the mouth. Despite what it may seem, those 6 were still very much alive, at least physically. However, mentally, they were dead, as not a single thought appeared in their minds. My attack had effortlessly entered their mind before exploding, destroying every tidbit of their consciousness in the process, turning them into nothing but a vegetable. Although while I had destroyed their mind, their brain was still perfectly intact, meaning that their body would still continue to live, though I wasn't such a monster that I'd leave them in such a pathetic state. Raising my hand, I willed their bodies off the ground and floated them over the boat before dropping them in the ocean. With the gear they were wearing, they quickly began sinking into the sea. Drowning wasn't a good way to die, but I believed it to be more honorable than turning into a lifeless husk. Ouch ha, don't push yourself, Seabass. You still haven't recovered yet. Just take it easy, muttered Seabass with a frown as he rubbed his head, which throbbed in pain. While lightly massaging my head, I floated the frightened older Marine overboard before dropping him back into his boat, which surprised him. However, he didn't waste any time and quickly began rowing away. I believe Freya mentioned Captain always leaves someone alive so they may retell their feats. If I'm mistaken, I just won't bring the topic up, mused Seabass with a slight smile while watching the older Marine row the boat into the distance as he approached the helm, returning to his original duty of steering the ship toward the dock. Without interruption after the little Marine incident, the rest of the way to the dock was relatively quiet. Only the sound of waves and raging fire were discernible. Nearing the dock rather slowly, I attempted to be extra careful as this was my first time ever sailing a boat, and I didn't want to mess up on my first day among the Frenzy Pirates. However, thankfully, the whole docking proceeded pretty smoothly. It may not have been the best, but I'm just content that I hadn't damaged the ship. I intended just to sit here and wait until Captain and Freya finished with their raid, but not too far away, I heard the sound of battle, and looking in that direction, I noticed the occasional fire shooting into the sky along with numerous iron bars. But what really stood out was when I saw a seemingly demonic figure flying about in the sky, one that looked somewhat familiar to boot. If I'm not mistaken, that should be Freya, and it looks like she is engaging in a pretty intense battle. I know I should guard the ship, but I'm very interested in learning more about my crew members. Besides, it's not too far away. muttered Seabass with a look of intrigue as he rubbed his beard with a thoughtful expression before eventually deciding to near the intense battle. Gently landing on the dock, I headed towards the battle, and since it was pretty close, I got there relatively quickly. In fact, I could still view the ship from over here. Once I arrived, I noticed many Marines with fanatical expressions of pure lust, just standing there as they gazed upon the battle between Freya and what looked to be a Marine who was able to create iron bars from her body. At first glance, the battle between the two looked seemingly equal. However, if you took the time to observe the fight, just like I was doing, it wasn't hard to notice that Freya had the upper hand. Freya was simply physically superior to the woman in every attribute, whether it was speed, agility, strength, or especially endurance, seeing how Freya practically shrugged off most of the woman's attacks that connected. While I was watching the two, Freya was suddenly struck with a powerful blow by the woman, causing her to get sent flying a few dozen meters back, and she only managed to stop herself a few meters before hitting me. "Ho ho, are you okay, Freya? You were just struck with a rather nasty blow," asked Seabass with a smile as he extended his hand to assist Freya from the ground. "Thank you, Seabass, and yes, I'm fine. The hit wasn't as bad as it looked," replied Freya with a slight smile, grabbing Seabass's hand as she stood up before brushing off the dust and dirt that had accumulated on her bruised and battered body, though other than that, she looked rather fine. "If you say so, Freya. While it doesn't seem like you need my assistance, would you like my help in defeating her?" asked Seabass while glancing at the bloody and injured Hina in the distance, who seemed to be nearing her limit. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't need it. I intend to finish this battle soon," remarked Freya while shaking her head and focusing on Hina. "All right then, I shall await your triumphant victory, Freya," said Seabass with a slight bow as he quickly backed away when he noticed Hina approach them. Nodding at Seabass, I flew toward the exhausted Hina while dodging her numerous iron bars. Nearing her, I kicked at her injured chest, yet she managed to block it with her arms, though I caused her to skid back a few meters, and I used that chance to blitz her. Swiftly appearing before her, I powerfully punched for her face, breaking right through her guard and landing a devastating punch on her jaw, causing her to be flung several into the distance while bouncing atop the destroyed pavement before crashing into a wall. "You're one tough woman to crack, I'll give you that. However, because of that, this fight helped greatly alleviate some accumulated rage, and I thank you for that," remarked Freya with a light smile while lightly panting as she approached Hina, who had just emerged from the wall. "Hina will not be defeated. Hina can't afford to lose this battle," said Hina, between her ragged breathing and injured body, as she stood up with difficulty, eyeing Freya with a hardened gaze while her hands slowly began to be encased in numerous iron bars. Seeing her encompass her hands in hundreds of iron bars, creating a wrecking ball for hands, I smirked as I spread my wings, flying high into the sky, allowing me to view most of the island. "Seems Diddy is enjoying himself," thought Freya when she noticed Diddy fighting against thousands of Brisk Kingdom soldiers in the city as he slowly carved a path toward the castle, leaving behind mangled corpses. Focusing back on the battle at hand, I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, recalling the times my captain's electricity had burned me as I attempted to do something I hadn't tried yet, covering myself in flames. "Come on, Freya, you've got this. You managed to ignite your foot and wings on fire. It's the same concept, except on a larger area," thought Freya calmly with her eyes closed as she slowly but surely began to be covered in red-hot flames. Yet she was perfectly fine. Feeling intense heat surrounding me, I opened my eyes only to see that I had succeeded in enveloping myself in flames, and while I was pretty happy at my achievement, I was still in the midst of battle, looking down at Hina, only to see a massive ball of iron. Smirking, I flipped myself until I was upside down and powerfully flapped my wings as I speedily headed straight toward her at an even faster speed than previously possible. Hell's descent as I neared Hina, she jumped into the air and spun around to gain momentum before finally attacking me with her massive wrecking ball. Flipping again, I extended my leg as I partially transformed it, just before hitting her iron ball. The instant we collided, an explosion of sound was heard as I busted right through her massive iron ball before eventually appearing from the other side just before the astonished Hina. Kicking her face, we crashed into the ground, creating a dust cloud, but unlike me, who was hardly harmed from the exchange, Hina was lying unconscious on the ground in the small crater our impact had made. That was a rather refreshing fight. I feel much better," muttered Freya with a slight smile as she returned back to her human appearance while her flames died down. With Freya of the Frenzy Pirates having just defeated Rear Admiral Hina, the Black Cage, she and Seabass took care of the remaining Marines, which he had long since turned into slaves before heading deeper into the city to regroup with their captain, who had also just finished massacring the Brisk Kingdom soldiers. Last one. Wish there were more of you, but it was still fun. Said Diddy with a feral grin while his blood-soaked body stood atop several corpses as he looked at the dying soldier. Having just killed the final soldier, I set my bloody staff on the ground and observed my surroundings, basking in the spectacle of the sheer chaos I'd committed. I was probably about halfway toward my destination, which was the castle or palace that most likely had been evacuated by now. However, the street from the start of the city to where I'm standing is littered with nothing but thousands of corpses, all of which were soldiers of this kingdom. I don't know exactly how many I killed, nor did I bother counting, mainly because I killed faster than I could count. If I were to guess, I'd say I killed, at the very minimum, 10,000 soldiers, though a more accurate number should be between 30,000 and 35,000. Hee, Freya's going to be annoyed, mused Diddy with a smirk as he looked behind him, seeing nothing but corpse after corpse. Without the city, one wouldn't even know there was a street beneath all those bodies. While that may sound like a relatively large amount of people to kill in less than 20 or so minutes, don't forget most soldiers were practically cannon fodder before me. With just a single swing of ONEPIECE, I was capable of killing several, and coupled with my speed, I was able to swing several times a second. The only ones who put up any resistance were two generals, yet their strength was still insignificant. They couldn't even withstand 3 of my blows before collapsing dead on the ground. Since the army had no one able to stop me, or at least stall me, I was practically mowing grass among thousands of men, and boy was it fun. Not nearly as exhilarating as fighting against a powerful opponent, but it was still very much enjoyable. Now then, I should go and find the royal family of this kingdom and kill them as well. However, before I do that, let's deal with the little rat, muttered Diddy with a smirk as he snapped his head toward his right, his eyes landing on the figure of a lone woman peeking from behind a building and holding a transponder snail while trembling in fear. Smirking, I swiftly appeared right before her, causing her to nearly scream in fright as she dropped her transponder snail, though she had quickly caught it before it touched the ground. However, other than that, she didn't move a muscle as she nervously stared at me, with her fearful eyes. I didn't immediately kill her, partly because I was confused about why she was even here. I mean, every other civilian had either run away or hidden, yet here she was, standing before me while recording me or taking pictures. WENP. I believe I have seen that somewhere. Wait, wasn't that on the bird I got the newspaper from? Thought Diddy curiously as he noticed a white sash on her arm. I if it I isn't T too much to ask, see could I possibly get an interview with US sir? IMP part of the WENP, also known as the World Economy newspaper, stated the woman with a trembling voice as she warily looked at Diddy, who was still covered in blood, though even in such a deadly situation, she couldn't contain her curiosity. Hearing her words only deepened my confusion until I gave up and started laughing, finding this whole situation amusing since even though she knew I could easily kill her, she still asked for an interview. Ha ha ha, why you're something, aren't you, woman? You're interesting. What's your name? Asked Diddy with a smirk as he holstered ONEPIECE while eyeing the woman, whose fear only deepened from his chaotic-sounding laugh. My name is Janet Candor, replied Janet, and although terrified, she said her name in pride as she puffed out her ample chest. Well Janet, since I quite like you, I don't mind doing a little interview, but we'll have to save it for later, as I still haven't finished my raid on Briss Kingdom. I still need to kill the royal family and burn a few flags, and now that I think about it, your appearance is perfectly timed. Follow me, stated Diddy with a thoughtful expression before smirking as he turned around and started walking toward the palace while Janet hesitantly followed behind. Since our little raid on the island and everyone going into hiding, the streets were empty, making it easy for us to walk toward the palace. So, about why your earlier statement of killing the royal family, is it true? And if so, why do you seek to kill them? Do you possibly have some form of hatred toward them? Asked Janet as she put away her transponder snail before taking out a pen and notebook, intending to jot Diddy's answers. Of course it's true, and I want to kill them since it'll create more chaos. No, I don't hate them. In fact, yesterday was the first time I had ever stepped foot on this island. Remarked Diddy with a smirk while Janet nodded her head, quickly taking notes of his every word. For a news reporter, you're rather comfortable in the presence of a pirate. It must not be your first time. Added Diddy while glancing at her, noticing how quickly she adapted to her situation. And no, it's not my first time. Compared to most of my colleagues, I like to get much closer to the scene, which usually results in me getting caught. Thankfully, I've always been rather lucky and haven't been killed, or worse, yet seeing you, I had thought my luck had finally run out. Said Janet rather awkwardly with a light smile. You're a crazy one. Pot calling the kettle black at its finest. Muttered Janet quietly, though, given Diddy's insane levels of perception. He heard every word clearly, yet he merely laughed in response. For the rest of the walk toward the palace, Janet would occasionally ask me questions, primarily things related to the ongoing raid, though she would ask about myself and my pirate group, while there were a few rather personal questions that would have been smarter if left unanswered. But where's the fun in that? Eventually, we did end up arriving at the palace, and contrary to what I had thought, there were still guards. Of course, they were all weak and easily taken care of, but it was still unexpected. "Don't you know the term personal space?" questioned Diddy as he glanced at Janet, who was practically hugging him from how close she was. Sorry. I just wasn't trying to be killed by the guards. They were attacking both of us," said Janet with an apologetic smile while backing away as she and Diddy walked through the castle, encountering guards with every turn, attempting to locate the royal family. I might as well have been navigating through a maze instead of a palace. Every single hallway led to several smaller hallways, and unfortunately, even when I broke through the walls, it didn't really seem to help my situation. "I think this is the first time I've ever gotten lost," muttered Diddy with a frown as he shot a shuriken at the approaching guards, causing them to collapse on the ground, their armor proving not the slightest bit of protection. If you don't mind, I can try taking the lead. I may not know where to go, but I've always been lucky," said Janet lightly, completely unfazed at the deaths of a couple of guards. Sure, go ahead. I should probably clean this blood anyways. I can hardly smell anything other than iron," stated Diddy with a wave of his hand as he channeled lightning throughout his body, causing the blood to burn. I followed behind Janet while lightning crackled around my body, burning off the blood dyed into my fur, returning my fur to its usual beautiful golden brown. Though there was still a scent of iron, it wasn't nearly as overwhelming, allowing me actually to smell the inside of the palace. "Well, I found the palace's throne room, but it's empty," said Janet as she opened a large door, revealing a long, narrow room with a throne at the end. That's good enough. The royal family has most likely evacuated. All I need is get their scent anyways. Once I do that, it's over," remarked Diddy with a grin as he quickly approached the throne in the distance. Once I neared the throne, I deeply inhaled the surrounding air, capturing their scent, and the moment I did that, their tracks were perfectly revealed to me, allowing me to almost vividly see their every move before leaving. Following the scent, I approached a statue of a knight and grabbed the knight's sword by its hilt before pulling, causing it to extend slightly before stopping. Though that didn't do anything, a few moments later, the throne made a loud creaking sound as it revealed a secret passage underneath it, causing me to smirk as the scent suggested they enter the passage. Well, that isn't surprising. I would expect a palace to have a few secret passageways for situations like this," muttered Janet as she looked down the dimly lit passage. Wait here. It'll be quicker without you," said Diddy with a smirk and, without any hesitation, jumped down into the secret passage as he quickly chased after the scent. Landing on the ground, before me was nothing but a dimly lit narrow passage supported by wooden pillars on the side of the wall. From the looks of it, it extended for quite a long while, which caused me to frown at how idiotic the royal family was. I mean, why didn't they destroy the passage? Instead they left it perfectly intact as if inviting me to follow after them. I'd be utterly stupid if I didn't expect this to be a trap," mused Diddy with a feral smirk as he got down on all fours before speedily dashing through the narrow passageway. As I ran down the passage, I made sure to stay relatively alert for any possible traps since while I was confident I'd be able to tank whatever they threw at me, it's better to be careful. I'm crazy, not stupid. There is a distinct line between the two. While running, I suddenly inhaled the scent of gunpowder, which caused me to grin as I hopped off the ground and latched onto the ceiling with my nails before continuing to run down the passage. Looking at the ground below me, I noticed a few pieces of the ground were slightly different from the rest of the dirt. It was a little too smooth and didn't seem to flush with the rest of the surrounding dirt. Pressure plates which probably ignite the gunpowder I can smell, causing the entire passageway to be destroyed while burying anyone caught in the explosion. Anyone stupid enough to set those off deserves to die," remarked Diddy while eyeing the few pressure plates from the ceiling before ignoring them as he continued running on all fours. While the trap from earlier was decently clever, they were too stupid to add any more, so the rest of the run through the passage was serene, only the sound of my nails digging into the ceiling. After a few minutes of running, I arrived at the end of the passage as I hopped off the ceiling while landing on the ground, eyeing the boulder that was blocking my path. Placing my hands atop the boulder, I began pushing, and a few loud noises later, I moved the boulder out of the way, allowing me to see the ocean I had heard from the other side of the boulder. It seems the passageway leads to an uninhabited coast of the island, which could only mean one thing. they fled the island by boat. Mused Diddy as he exited the passageway and walked along the sandy beach while observing the coast for signs of a ship. Other than a relatively small dock nearby, there was nothing else I could glean, meaning they must have fled shortly after we started the raid. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made so much progress in such a short time. However, it didn't matter. They couldn't have gotten too far. It hadn't even been an hour since we first started fighting, so they must still be relatively close to the island. Besides, I still have the king's scent, and I can sense it extends into the sea. The royal family never had a chance at escaping in the first place. Hee, it's been a while since I participated in a hunt. This isn't too bad. Much more fun than hunting unintelligent beasts. Muttered Diddy as he jumped into the sky and propelled himself through the air just above the water while following the king's scent. While the ocean definitely made it harder to track the scent, thankfully, I didn't arrive too late, since if I had just waited 20 or so minutes, I'm confident the ocean's strong salty smell would have dispersed the king's scent. At that point, it would have been extremely difficult for me to track him. Propelling myself just a few feet above the sea in the distance before me, I saw the silhouette of a boat appear. Seeing that, I quickly sped, and in a few short moments, I arrived near the inconspicuous ship, which was covered in the king's scent, causing me to smile. However, I quickly dived into the water to avoid being discovered. Now then, time to take you back home. Mused Diddy with a smirk as he neared the underside of the boat. Just a few minutes before Diddy arrived near the boat, the king of the Brisk Kingdom, his family, and his few trusted guards were aboard the fleeing ship as they sailed to the closest island for safety. Chase, have you managed to contact the Marines at all? Asked one of the guards curiously with a frown while looking toward Brisk Kingdom. For the 20th time, Hayes, no, I still haven't. Captain Ness isn't responding at all. Replied one of the guards while also frowning as he held a motionless transponder snail, wearing a marine hat on its shell. Don't get mad at me. The king is the one who ordered me to ask you. I'll go and report to him. Make sure to keep a lookout in case any ships happen to follow us. Said Hayes with an annoyed expression as he turned around, leaving the stern of the ship while heading toward the captain's quarters, or the kingly quarters if you will. Your Majesty, it's me, Hayes. May I enter? Asked Hayes as he knocked on the door while waiting for a response, only for a nervous voice to emerge from behind the door. Why yes, you can enter, Hayes. Did Chase manage to contact the Marines? Asked the king, an ugly, fat, middle-aged man with a crown on his head, sitting atop a small throne in the center of the room while his queen, a few concubines, and several children sat together. And no, he hasn't, your ma dash, said Hayes as he entered the room and kneeled, though before he could finish speaking, the king had thrown his crown at him in rage. Shit. Stupid Marines can't even deal with a few pathetic pirates, making me flee my own kingdom. What do I pay them for if they can't even protect me? Exclaimed the king in remarkable anger as he stood up and approached Hayes, who was bleeding from his head, yet he was out of breath by the time he reached him. My king, please quell your anger. Being agitated will affect your health, advised the queen as she attempted to calm the king's anger, though it seemed like he was past his limits. Shut up, bitch. Yelled the king in pure rage as he backhanded the queen, causing her to fall to the ground while bleeding from her mouth. Although a few of the children clenched their fists in anger, they did nothing. How am I supposed to calm down? They even managed to defeat a rear admiral. Tell me, how am I supposed to calm down? What if they decide to come after me next? Added the king with fear and rage as he looked at the bleeding queen before glancing at Hayes. However, before anyone could respond, they suddenly felt the entire ship tremble, causing the king to nearly fall to the ground. Are you okay, your majesty? Asked Hayes in concern as he stopped the king from falling. What was that? AAC king. Yelled the king, thinking the worst as he was already consumed by fear. Just when someone was about to respond, the ship again trembled, though this time, it was much more violently, causing everyone to fall to the ground as they attempted to gain balance. What's going on? Muttered one of the children as everyone slowly stood up. Why, your majesty? We've got a problem. Stated Chase in a panic as he busted through the doors and entered the room. The boat, it's flying. Added Chase, his words causing everyone to look at him as if he were stupid, though they didn't completely dismiss his words. With Chase's words, everyone stood up and quickly exited the room before approaching the ship's railing, only to look over it, and though they were expecting to see the ocean, while they still did, it was tens of feet below them. We are really flying. Muttered Hayes, as he and everyone present was filled with disbelief. While Diddy was hauling the ship filled with fleeing royalty back to their kingdom, Freya and Seabass, who were carrying an unconscious Hina, had just arrived at the castle, specifically the throne room, where they expected to see Diddy. But to their confusion, all they saw was an entrance to a secret passage along with Janet, hiding behind a statue. "Ho ho, you can stop hiding, Miss Janet Candor. We mean you no harm, at least until Captain says otherwise," declared Seabass with a light chuckle as he approached the exact statue Janet hid behind. "H. How, do you know my name? And H. How did you know I've interacted with T the Frenzy Pirate, Sea Captain?" asked Janet hesitantly as she nervously eyed Seabass from behind the statue, though given his elegant attire and aura, she wasn't nearly as frightened when in Diddy's presence. "I wouldn't mind telling you, Miss Janet, but since you're a journalist of the WENP, it would be best to keep my abilities a secret from you lest you go and tell the whole world," said Seabass softly with a light smile as he outstretched his hand, to which, after some hesitation, Janet accepted it. "Seabass Visage, member of the Frenzy Pirates. She is Freya, vice captain of the Frenzy Pirates. A pleasure to be of your acquaintance, and no need to introduce yourself, Miss Janet. I already know everything there is to know about you, and I must say, you are one fortunate lady," added Seabass with a smile as he gestured toward Freya while gently shaking her hand, retracting his mind from Janet's body. "Oh okay, then Seabass, it's nice to meet the two of you," replied Janet awkwardly while eyeing Seabass, who reminded her of her late grandfather. "So where has Diddy gone, Seabass?" asked Freya lightly as she approached Seabass and an awkward Janet, who was utterly astonished at her beauty. "He's gone down that secret passage to retrieve the fleeing royal family. It's been several minutes since then, so he should be returning rather soon," replied Seabass while gesturing toward the throne, to which Freya nodded, though an excited Janet interrupted the two's conversation. "I can't believe it. It's really you, Freya. See, can I take some pictures of you, please?" yelled Janet in disbelief and excitement as she practically ignored Seabass and neared a confused Freya. "Yes, it's me, Freya. I appreciate the enthusiasm, Janet, but how come you're so excited to see me? I'm not anyone important, at least not yet," said Freya, slightly taken aback by how giddy Janet was. "And not anyone important? Do you not read the newspaper, Miss Freya?" asked Janet with widened eyes while looking at Freya, who nodded in response. "Freya is fine, and yes, sometimes I do. However, why are you asking me that?" replied Freya as she tilted her head in even more confusion. "So you don't even know about the storm you picture has created in the South Blue? People are already saying you're more beautiful than one of the warlords of the seas, Pirate Empress Boa Hancock, also known as the most beautiful woman in the world. Yet, the craziest thing is, this is all based on the picture of the newspaper printed a couple of days ago, and your picture was in black and white," exclaimed Janet eagerly in one breath as she rummaged through her suitcase, retrieving Boa Hancock's wanted poster for Freya and Seabass to see. "Pirate Empress Boa Hancock? She's definitely one of the most beautiful women ever to grace this world. But I must agree with Miss Janet. She is still a league below Freya in terms of beauty and figure, and although I've never met her, I'm certain her etiquette isn't that good either. She is a pirate after all," remarked Seabass lightly as he glanced between Boa Hancock and Freya, easily noticing who was superior. "So she's Pirate Empress Boa Hancock? I've heard her name being mentioned a few times in the past, but I've never really been interested in her, so I didn't acquire information about her. Though it is, as you say, Seabass, she doesn't hold a candle to my beauty," stated Freya while uninterestedly eyeing the wanted poster before handing it back to Janet. Just as Janet was about to ask Freya if she could take some photos of her, all of a sudden, the palace ceiling collapsed, catching everyone by surprise as they laid eyes on what came crashing through the roof. "Is that a ship?" exclaimed Janet in shock as she witnessed a ship falling to the ground while destroying the throne room. "Ha, that stupid fool. He always loves to make a crazy entrance," muttered Freya with a sigh as he grabbed her head in annoyance. "Ho ho, our captain is a wild one," said Seabass with a chuckle as he watched the ship slam onto the ground, destroying the throne and everything else nearby. Descending into the massive hole the ship made after dropping it, I landed on the ground just before the boat and glanced at Freya, Seabass, and Janet in the distance. "Hee hee, I found the royals of Brisk Kingdom. Cowards were trying to flee," announced Diddy with a grin as he slapped the broken ship, further damaging it, while looking at the approaching three. "TCH, are you sure they're not dead? That was a rather tall drop for a bunch of normal people," asked Freya as she neared Diddy and the ship behind him, though the quiet whimpering answered her question. "They're alive, though they probably have a couple of injuries, but whatever. I plan to kill them anyways, so if anything, I'll be putting them out of their misery," replied Diddy with a smirk as he dismissively glanced at the ship while Freya shook her head. Well, then I suggest we get to it, Captain. I'm sure a fleet of marine battleships are heading toward Brisk Kingdom as we speak, said Seabass lightly, causing Diddy to grin. Hee, while fighting against a fleet of marines sounds enticing. Let's finish this. We can't have our first major raid last too long. Otherwise, it might be considered a failure, remarked Diddy with a grin as he turned around and sliced open the damaged hull of the ship, revealing the royal family huddled together. To call this a major raid when only 3 people participated is unheard of, muttered Freya lightly. Ignoring Freya's little remark, I entered the ship and approached the huddling royal family, though as I got close, a couple of guards appeared from around the corner, trying to ambush me. However, it was a pathetic attempt since I knew where they were the entire time. Slicing both of their swords in half with my nails, I grabbed the broken pieces of the blade, and without giving them any time to react, I threw the blades at their necks. While the 2 guards fell to the ground as they died, I neared the royal family, who were fearfully looking at me, although it seemed like the king was more angry than scared. Before he could do anything, I grabbed the fat man by his collar and threw him out of the ship, followed by everyone else. Exiting the ship, I walked past the groaning royal family before standing in front of them alongside Freya, Seabass, and Janet. Should I still be here? Asked Janet lightly while glancing between the royal family and the frenzy pirates. Yes, I'll need you to take a picture of us with their corpse. Otherwise, who'll know we killed them? Said Diddy with a bloodthirsty grin, his words frightening the royal family who overheard him. Why you, disgusting, pathetic pirates? Don't you know who you're messing with? I'm the king of the Brisk Kingdom, and we are affiliated with the world government. Killing a member of royalty is the same as challenging the world government's authority. And no, it's the same as declaring war on the world government. Why yeah, you heard me, pirate. War. Exclaimed the king angrily as he stood up with his fat body while heavily breathing, pointing at Diddy. Are you stupid? Of course, I know that, replied Diddy with a smirk while looking at the smug king, who misinterpreted Diddy's words. Since you know the consequences of going against the WG, surrender yourself. If you do that, I'll put in a good word for you to reduce your sentence. And I want that woman to become my wife, as she'll be new Q-Queen, stated the king smugly while lustfully looking at Freya, and if it weren't for his obese body, you'd be able to notice something hard. I don't think I've ever interacted with someone so stupid. Does this fool not understand his situation? He's about to die, so why is he acting so arrogant? I'm confused, questioned Diddy in utter confusion as he glanced between Freya, Seabass, and Janet. It would be best to ignore his words, Captain. Listening to these types of people will only make you stupid, replied Seabass with a frown, already feeling a headache from the sheer stupidity radiating off the king. If that's the case, you should pay him some more attention, Diddy, stated Freya with a smirk as she folded her arms. I don't know, I'm just as confused as you, said Janet in confusion as she tilted her head. Why you bastards? Stop ignoring me. I'm the king, said the king angrily as he threw a tantrum, though he was interrupted as he suddenly felt tremendous pain emerge from his arm. My hand. RGHHH, yelled the king in pure agony from the loss of his right hand. Ugh, annoying. Yeah, let's finish this quickly, muttered Diddy as he approached the yelling king while rubbing his ears in pain, though before he could kill him, someone intercepted him. If you're going to kill us, pirate, please allow me to kill my father, said a young prince, even younger than Diddy, as he firmly stood before him despite his fear, though determination means nothing before power. You can kill him in the afterlife, said Diddy with a smirk as he walked past the prince and decapitated him with his sharp nails. Once I killed that boy, one of the women started yelling as well, which just further irritated me, prompting me to quickly kill them all by decapitation, not giving them a chance to cry or grieve. Approaching the still yelling king, who was oblivious to what just happened, I did the same to him as I did to the rest of his family, and finally, the place went silent. That's much better. Seabass, collect their heads, said Diddy in relief as he looked at Seabass, who caused the several heads to float, though before he could finish speaking, a long iron rod suddenly attacked Diddy, slightly surprising everyone. Seeing the incoming iron rod, I grabbed it with my hand, stopping it just a few inches from wrapping around my neck. Following the iron rod, I noticed an injured Hina in the distance. I could have sworn I'd knocked her unconscious, remarked Freya with a frown as horns, wings, a tail, and nails sprouted from her body as she prepared to fight her. I'd completely forgotten about you, Hina. However, thanks, your timing couldn't be more perfect, just when we required somewhere to place the heads. Stated Diddy with a grin as he suddenly yanked the iron rod, causing Hina to get sent flying right toward Diddy. As I yanked her to me, she shot a few more iron rods from her body, yet I easily blocked them by using her own iron rod that I held. Once she got near me, I let go of the iron rod before reaching forward and grabbing her by the neck. "Diddy, you know what crime you've just committed? The Marines nor the world government will forget about you. They'll chase after you until you're either dead or captured," said Hina as she tried freeing herself by attacking Diddy. But even up close, he was far too slippery. In all honesty, no. I've got no idea how serious of a crime-killing royalty affiliated with world government is, but I imagine it should be a decently severe crime, said Diddy with a grin as he squeezed Hina's neck, choking her, while Freya and Seabass both sighed at his response. Pirates like you are our reasons why Justice exists. Even if Hina will die, I'll at least take you with me, yelled Hina with difficulty while her entire body morphed into hundreds of iron rods as she surrounded Diddy's body until there was nothing but an iron cocoon. Feeling myself being constricted slowly like prey caught by a snake, I couldn't help but chuckle at her last-ditch effort since, while it was somewhat strong, it was utterly useless against me. After all, iron and lightning are very compatible, or in this case, the opposite. Smirking, I summoned forth the lighting that resided inside my heart before releasing it without restraint, almost like an EMP blast, causing Hina to emit a loud scream of agony before the iron cocoon that surrounded me disappeared, leaving behind an unconscious and smoking Hina lying on the ground. Great, now I'm going to have to fix my hair. Thanks, stupid captain, remarked Freya with a frown of annoyance while looking at Diddy as she tried fixing her long hair standing on end. Yes, now I look rather foolish, which isn't befitting of my elegant stature, said Seabass with a sigh as his beard and hair also stood on end from the electric explosion released by Diddy. Luckily, I was far enough away, muttered Janet as she peeked behind a broken pillar that had protected her against the electricity. Well, hurry and fix your hair. We're about to take a crew picture, stated Diddy with a smirk as he reached down to Hina and sliced off a rather long iron rod before slicing it again into several different pieces. Grabbing the several pieces, I started craving the ends of it with my nails into a somewhat pointed tip, which only took a few minutes. The tips didn't need to be super sharp or anything. After all, they only needed to hold a head. Once I finished, I stabbed the 8 decapitated heads onto the iron rods before placing them behind me into a half circle, signaling Seabass to place the floating heads onto each improvised pike. I backed away to get a good look. Yep, that should be good. Now for the last part. The flags, mused Diddy with a grin as he looked up toward the ceiling. Jumping into the air, I propelled myself through the broken ceiling and continued doing so until I arrived at the highest point of the palace, where 2 rather large flags were swaying in the wind. The bottom flag had a symbol of a red circle surrounded by a hollow circle, with 4 red triangles pointing in the 4 cardinal directions on the white flag. The top flag was also white and had 5 blue circles in the cardinal directions with 1 in the middle, while the words World Government were printed at the bottom. They were the flags of the Briss Kingdom and World Government, respectively. Gripping the pole, I ripped it off the palace's roof before returning to the throne room, only to see Janet already preparing to take a picture. All right, Freya and Seabass, everything is ready. Time for the picture, declared Diddy with a smirk as he sat on the ground just before the half circle of heads. Ho, it's time already? I must look presentable. It's been a few decades since my last official photo, remarked Seabass as he approached Diddy while fixing himself. Well, thanks to a certain someone, this is as good as my hair will get, said Freya while scoffing as she neared Diddy before standing behind him, right beside Seabass. Seeing how everyone was ready, I cut a piece of the flagpole off to make it shorter before holding it in my mouth while unholstering Nage-sa, letting it rest on my shoulder. Freya and Seabass also did their own little pose. Freya stood in a way that accentuated her heavenly curves while blowing a kiss, causing her to look even hotter than usual. Seabass, on the other hand, looked pretty much the same as his bounty poster, but he was also floating Hina's unconscious body in the air, causing me to smile at his thought process. You're a quick learner, Seabass. Now then, Janet, take a picture of us, stated Diddy with a smirk as he channeled lighting through the flagpole, setting the Briss Kingdom and WG flags on fire. Alright, on the count of 3, say, frenzy? Said Janet awkwardly while scratching her head as she held the transponder snail, pointing at Diddy, Freya, Seabass, the unconscious Hina, the several heads, and the damaged ship behind them. 1, 2, 3. yelled Janet as she took a picture of the haughty Freya, the elegant sea bass, and the feral Diddy, who was holding 2 burning flags in his mouth. Several days later, somewhere in Paradise Sea, just before the Grand Line, far from Brisk Kingdom, was the Marine headquarters, also known as Marine Ford, the first line of defense for Mary Geos. A conversation between 2 of the most influential Marines was taking place at the topmost floor of Marine Ford, inside the Fleet Admiral Command Room. Ugh, come on, Garp. First, it was your son, and now even your grandson has begun to create a stir. Don't you have anything to say? Yelled Fleet Admiral Sengoku from behind the desk as he angrily looked at Monkey D. Garp while slamming down a wanted poster for a man named Monkey D. Luffy worth 30 million berries. Nope, ha ha ha, replied Garp seriously as he looked at Luffy's bounty before erupting into laughter while stuffing his face full of crackers. Ha, why do I even bother? Muttered Sengoku with a sigh of exhaustion as he plopped back onto his seat. Anyways, we'll discuss your family problems later, but have you heard the news? A newly formed pirate group in the South Blue raided Brisk Kingdom, and not only did they succeed, but they also killed the royal family. Added Sengoku solemnly as he pushed forward the newspaper, with the front page being a picture of the frenzy pirates. Huh, I didn't know that. You're telling me 3 people in the South Blue raided a kingdom. Isn't that Rear Admiral Hina in the background? Remarked Garp as he picked up the newspaper and examined it before noticing Hina in the background, completely ignoring the 2 burning flags. Yes, that is her. She was beaten rather badly. However, thankfully, some Marines arrived not too long later, and she was given first aid before arriving at a nearby Marine base for proper treatment. Replied Sengoku with a frown as he glanced at the picture. Hey, well, they must be some decent pirates if the 3 of them managed to defeat her. She isn't your average Joe, after all. Said Garp with a nod as he continued reading the newspaper, only to be slightly taken aback by Sengoku's words. That's part of the problem, Garp. After Hina recounted the details of the events, she wasn't defeated by all 3 of them. The woman who goes by Freya, also known as the most beautiful woman in the world, is the one she was defeated by, and without much difficulty either. Stated Sengoku solemnly, though as he was speaking with Garp, a serious conversation hardly happened. I guess the change was rather quick, but she is definitely more beautiful than Boa Hancock. Muttered Garp lightly while munching on crackers, his words irritating Sengoku. Garp, will you take this seriously? The only reason I brought this up was that the group's captain is holding a burning flag of the world government. To make matters worse, his name is DIDDY Kong. Yelled Sengoku as he again slammed his desk while eyeing Garp. Oh, now that you mention it, I can see that. First it was that man, then Fisher Tiger, and now it's this boy. Ha ha ha, the WG got their plates full, don't they? Remarked Garp with laughter, which only served to infuriate Sengoku, though as he was someone who had dealt with his personality for several decades, he didn't blow a fuse. Why do you think I called you? The WG is practically breathing down my neck to capture those pirates. Exclaimed Sengoku. That's why you suddenly urged me to come here. I refuse. Besides, I'm already busy. I've got a few disciples to train. Said Garp with a slight frown as he shook his head and stood up. You're the only free Vice Admiral, Garp. If nothing is done soon, the world government will act on their own accord, and you know what happens whenever they do that. Stated Sengoku angrily as he also stood up. That doesn't sound like my problem. Besides, I've run out of crackers. I'll see you later, Sengoku. Replied Garp as he dismissed Sengoku's words and exited the office. Once we took the photo, doing several on Freya's request since she wished to get the best possible angle she could. When we finished, we exited the palace and walked down the streets of the city while heading back toward our ship, which I just now realized was being guarded by no one. Usually, I wouldn't be too worried since I would have killed everyone on the island, but clearly I didn't this time. In fact, I'm rather confident there were still some Marines hiding somewhere in the city. Though I wasn't too bothered about them, I didn't have much desire to chase after a bunch of weak Marines. I'm surprised you're just going to leave with this city still relatively intact, Diddy. Other than killing the royal family, you hadn't done much to the Brisk Kingdom. Remarked Freya lightly while the 4 walked down the empty streets. For the record, the main reason I destroyed Karate Island and Batarilla is to make a name for our pirate group quickly, and unless the citizens of Brisk Kingdom suddenly want to fight me, which I greatly encourage, I won't be wasting my time destroying this place. Besides, killing the royal family has already created enough chaos. Now that a spot of power is empty, you think those nobles will just sit back and not do anything? Stated Diddy with a smirk as he looked back at the destroyed castle, while the 3 were taken aback by his words. Oh, that's not a bad idea at all, Captain. With no king or queen commanding the Brisk Kingdom, many nobles will start to vie for that empty position. And if nothing is done, with a matter of a few weeks, a civil war will most likely erupt in Brisk Kingdom, which will end up slowly destroying the kingdom. Said Seabass lightly while rubbing his beard as he instantly saw through Diddy's plan, causing him to chuckle. Heh, that's a rather good plan. Something only an intelligent person could formulate. I wonder who created it? Was it Seabass? Questioned Freya with a mocking smirk as she eyed Diddy, causing Seabass to laugh while Janet suppressed her chuckle. TCH, I came up with it, Freya. Besides, if it weren't for Seabass explaining it, someone like you, who is all beauty, wouldn't have been able to understand the plan. Replied Diddy, smirking as he bared his fangs to the grinning Freya while horns emerged from her forehead. That's real rich coming from a stupid beast such as yourself. Haven't you heard the phrase, pot calling the kettle black? Never mind, even if you've heard that before, you're too slow to grasp the meaning. Said Freya, her words laced with killing intent, as she set her horns on fire while sparks of electricity emitted from Diddy's head. Hee, what was that, Freya? I couldn't understand you since I'm such a stupid beast. How about you tell it to my face? Yelled Diddy, killing intent lacing his every word as he slammed his head toward Freya, who did the same, causing their foreheads to clash against each other, creating a small explosion of fire and electricity that engaged in battle. I said, you're nothing but a stupid beast. Shouted Freya with a grin as wings, nails, and a tail emerged from her body, increasing her strength and allowing her to push Diddy's lightning-clad head back. To think a woman whose only good quality is being used as a toilet is calling me a stupid beast, remarked Diddy, grinning as he used more strength, pushing Freya's flaming horned head back. Just when I was about to beat the shit out of Freya, I suddenly felt gravity disappear as Freya, and I were lifted into the air, and it didn't take a genius to figure out who it was since there was only one person present who could do such a thing. Ho, I apologize for interrupting your little lover's quarrel, but we still need to return to the ship and leave the island. If the two of you started fighting, I don't know how long it'll take before one of you emerge victorious, and by then reinforcements could have very well arrived by then. Stated Seabass with a soft chuckle as he looked at the irritated Freya and annoyed Diddy floating in the air while Janet stood beside him. Humph, Diddy and I aren't lovers. In fact, we're the complete opposite. He's my mortal enemy. Declared Freya with a scowl, her tone laced with venom as she eyed Diddy. TCH, why'd you have to ruin the fun, Seabass? Just when it was about to get good too. It is rather enjoyable beating Freya until the brink of death. You should try it sometime. Said Diddy with a slight frown before smirking as he glanced at Freya, who decided to ignore his comment. I'll have to pass up on that offer. I wouldn't wish to anger my senior crew member when I'm still injured. Besides, Freya is rather powerful. I don't even know if I'm her equal, let alone defeat her. Replied Seabass while smiling as he humbly declined. Hey, whatever you say, Seabass, let's go. Said Diddy while shaking his head and continuing where they left off as they neared the dock in the distance. With Freya keeping her annoying mouth shut, the rest of the walk toward the ship was peaceful, something I'm not very fond of, but I don't mind it every now and then, only in small quantities though. Approaching the ship, we walked past the destroyed pier where Freya and Hina fought before arriving at our ship, which surprisingly didn't have a single scratch on it. Welp, I've got to hand it to you, Seabass. The ship looks exactly the same as I remember, not a single damaged area in sight. Muttered Diddy as he skimmed the ship's hull before nodding at Seabass, who chuckled in response. Grabbing Janet by the waist, and without any warning, I leaped aboard my ship before releasing my hold on her, causing her to tumble onto the deck, while Freya and Seabass followed behind me by flying onto the ship, gracefully landing. Ouch, a warning would have been appreciated. Muttered Janet as she stood up while rubbing her head, though Diddy just laughed before ignoring her. Now then, if you three don't mind, could you reveal yourselves? I sensed you all long before I approached my ship. Declared Diddy loudly with a smirk as he tapped his foot on the deck, though even after a few moments, nothing happened. If they were trying to sneak aboard our ship, they should have done a better job at hiding themselves. They didn't even try to mask their scent. Muttered Freya as she sniffed the air, although her senses aren't as acute as Diddy's, nor are succubi abilities known for their incredible senses, she still consumed a mythical Zoan after all, so of course, her perception has been greatly enhanced. Hi, you three, just come out. Hiding won't do you any good. Said Seabass with a sigh while shaking his head as his senses searched for active minds, only to find three familiar people in the ship's cargo. Although they didn't react to my or Freya's words, shortly after Seabass spoke, I sensed them moving from their hiding locations in the cargo as they slowly made their way up the stairs before eventually arriving at the deck, standing just a few meters in front of us. No wonder I thought those scents smelled familiar. It's you three, remarked Diddy while nodding as he looked at a woman and two men. You know them, Diddy? Asked Freya in slight surprise, knowing most people he encounters usually end up dead. Yep, they were present when I met Seabass. The big guy is Doorman, the smaller man is Daggerman, and the woman is Woman since she's the only woman. Replied Diddy as he pointed at Grand, the large muscular man, Scar, the man with a scar and white hair, and finally Trenza, the only woman. TCH, we have names. He's Grand, he's Scar, and I'm Trenza. Stated Trenza with a frown of annoyance as she pointed at the two men. Hee, I don't care what your names are. What I want to know is, why are you aboard my ship? I would have killed you the instant you showed yourselves, but since you are Saba's former underlings, I'll leave you with a warning. Get off my ship. Declared Diddy with a frown while eyeing each one of them as he enveloped them with his killing intent, causing their bodies to subconsciously tremble in fear as they resisted the urge to faint. We know F father has decided to join your sea crew, but T that doesn't mean we accept it. Said Trenza fearfully, and although she wanted to look away, she continued to stare at Diddy despite her lightheadedness. Why yeah. Wherever F father goes, we'll follow him. Whether it's T to hell or heaven. We'll always stand by H's side. Stated Grand as he stood his ground while eyeing Diddy's beastly eyes that evoked fear inside him. And if you C can't accept us, why you'll have T to kill us. Yelled Scar while fearfully clenching his teeth as his vision became blurry. Looking at them, while I did find their bravery to stare me in the eyes rather commendable, it didn't change my decision, though just when I was about to knock them out and throw them overboard, I felt Freya approach me before resting her hand atop my shoulder. I know you don't want them to join the crew, but take a second to think about it, Diddy. If you intend to continue doing crazy things like we did today, it'll be much easier with a larger group. Sure, they may be rather weak compared to us, but they are much stronger than the average person or marine. Besides, if they end up dying on a raid, then so be it. It would be their fault for being too weak after all. Whispered Freya softly inside Diddy's ear, causing him to take a second and ponder. Freya isn't wrong. With more people, it'll be easier to raid islands and cause chaos. Not to mention those three are decently stronger than the average person, so it's not like it's an utter waste of space to have them aboard my ship, and if they end up dying, that's their fault. Mused Diddy, intensely pondering with his eyes closed while Grand, Scar, and Trenza were nearing their limits. TCH, alright, fine. Since Freya is a splendid vice captain, I'll allow you three to join the Frenzy Pirates, but if I don't like you, I won't hesitate to throw you overboard. Got it. Declared Diddy with a slight frown as he retracted his killing intent, causing the three to sigh in relief before fainting onto the deck. Seeing them collapse onto the deck unconscious, I glanced at Seabass, yet it didn't seem necessary as he was already approaching their bodies. I've got it, Captain. I'll take care of them. Also, thank you for allowing them to join. It was rather hard parting away from these three troublemakers. I've known them since they were just children. We may not be blood-related, but they are practically my own children. Said Seabass with a smile of gratitude as he floated the three off the ground before turning around and slightly bowing to Diddy. Don't care, and I didn't do it for you. Just know if they aren't pulling their own weight, I'll kick them overboard, and it doesn't matter where we will be in the South Blue, I'll still do it. Replied Diddy while glancing at Seabass before shaking his head and ignoring him as he looked at Freya, who was heading toward the upper deck. Ho, I may not know you well, Captain, but I don't doubt your words. Remarked Seabass with a chuckle as he headed downstairs to the ship's second floor before entering one of three cabins. Leaping up to the upper deck, landing on the rail right in front of the helm, which is where Freya was currently sitting as she attempted to steer the ship out of the pier. Thankfully, with the way Seabass docked the ship, it was relatively easy to maneuver. I wasn't required to move the ship myself. Just when I was about to question Freya, I saw Janet walking up the stairs to my right, and in all honesty, I had forgotten she was even aboard the ship with how quiet she'd been. Actually, now that I think about it, why is she even here? Mused Diddy with a thoughtful expression as he hopped off the railing and approached Janet, who quickly noticed him. Why are you still here, Janet? Shouldn't you be doing, I don't know, things journalists do? Asked Diddy curiously as he looked at Janet, who had her pen and notebook out as she blankly looked at him. It seems you've already forgotten. You agreed to partake in my interview. Also, I needed a way to quickly get off the island before the Marines arrived. Said Janet with a sigh, while Diddy nodded his head. Now that you mention that, I did say I'll participate in your interview. TCH lame, I don't really feel like doing it anymore, but whatever. muttered Diddy as he rubbed his chin while furrowing his brows before frowning in annoyance. I wasn't really interested in doing this little interview anymore, but I also wasn't one to go back on my word, never have been, and never will be. My father, from my past life, had told me when I was still relatively young that a man should rather die than ever go back on his words. Of course, at that time, I thought what he said was dumb, not to mention he ended up dying because of that. However, while it's stupid, as I got older, I ended up respecting him for it. Even though he died, he never once went back on his words, and ever since then, I have done the same. Since I'm not doing anything right now, let's do the interview right now. I'm keen on quickly getting this over with," said Diddy with a shake of his head as he turned and approached his hammock, which was at the stern of the ship. "So, since I'll be conducting an interview, how should I address you? Diddy? Captain Diddy? Kong? Captain Kong? Or maybe you'd prefer your full name, Diddy D. Kong?" asked Janet as she moved a nearby barrel until it was before Diddy's hammock and sat on it while preparing to take notes. "I don't care, Diddy's fine with me," replied Diddy as a yawn escaped his mouth while Janet scribbled in her notebook. "So you prefer people calling you by your family name? Unusual, but definitely not the weirdest thing I've seen or encountered," muttered Janet, though her words did cause Diddy to raise an eyebrow. "What do you mean by family name?" "Diddy is my first name," remarked Diddy as he glanced at her in confusion while she confusedly looked back. Diddy is your first name, but it's also your family name. Usually, only if people are really close or intimate with each other will use their family name. Your last name, or your case Kong, would be the name you are normally addressed by, though it doesn't matter. All of this is like an unspoken tradition," stated Janet as she informed Diddy, who nodded in response. Well, it's a different world, so of course, some things will be different. Still, I've gotten used to being called Diddy," thought Diddy with a grin as he glanced at Freya, who was still at the helm. "Hee, you hear that, Freya? We must be rather close if you always call me by my family name," announced Diddy while looking at Freya, though, to his annoyance, she ignored him. "Anyways, let's begin the interview," said Janet with an eager smile as she started asking questions. For the next 2 hours, Janet conducted an interview, and although I didn't anticipate it, I rather enjoyed myself for those 2 hours. Her questions were mainly about my past and how I managed to get to where I am today, while also sprinkling in other questions such as where I'm from, my age, whether I've eaten a devil fruit, etc. While I did enjoy myself, it was only because this was the first time I'd ever sat down and reminisced about my past. If I were to do this regularly, it would get boring quickly. However, shortly after the interview started, Seabass and his 3 goons who had awakened, sat around and quietly listened to our conversation. And although Freya continued steering the ship, I've no doubt she heard everything, especially since when I got to the part regarding her, I'd occasionally see flames erupt off her body. After defeating Seabass twice, he joined the Frenzy Pirates, followed by raiding Brisk Kingdom the next day, and lastly with those 3 joining as interns, declared Diddy while pointing towards Seabass, Grand, Scar, and Trenza as the interview finally concluded. "Wow, that's quite the past. Not only do you remember everything from shortly after you were born, but you even managed to survive more than a week without an ounce of food or water. I am beyond shocked," said Janet in astonishment as she looked over the several pages of notes she had written. Not only was she amazed by his past, but so was everyone else. Ho, even an intelligent person wouldn't have been able to survive those numerous deadly situations. You'd also need strength, but most importantly, you'd need a powerful will to survive. Otherwise, you'd quickly become a beast's prey before you even knew it, remarked Seabass with a soft chuckle of amazement before glancing at the quiet Freya, who had burnt the helm in rage. Merely at the age of 8, he was already stronger than the 3 of us combined, muttered Grand quietly while clenching his fist as he looked at the lackadaisical Diddy. To master over 300 different martial arts in only 7 years, not to mention he was doing other things. What level of talent is required to make that even a feasible possibility, let alone a reality? Said Scar softly with slight fascination while glancing at the yawning Diddy. To think he's accomplished so many things in 15 years that couldn't even be achieved if people were given 10 times that amount. What an utter monster, whispered Trenza as she unblinking stared at Diddy, who was nearly pooped on by a passing bird. "I can hear you 3 also, it's Captain. Get it wrong again, and I'll feed you to the Sea Kings," remarked Diddy with a frown as he pointed at the 3 with his staff, causing them to nod quickly. "Why yes, Captain Kong," yelled the 3 simultaneously as they stood up and saluted Diddy with newfound determination. Retracting my bowstaff back to my side, I ignored those three as they headed toward the deck before shifting my focus toward Janet, who was still busy fiddling with her notebook. Seeing her like that, I just opted to leave her be as I hopped out of my hammock, landing beside Freya. "TCH, look what the hell you did. You burnt the helm," said Diddy with an irritated frown as he looked at the burnt helm that Freya was operating, though luckily, it was only the helm. "Humph, since you're the only one who really uses the helm, I'll ignore it, but if you burn any other part of this ship, I'll throw you into the sea and watch you drown," added Diddy as he glanced at the burnt helm before glancing at the unresponsive Freya. Seeing how unresponsive she was, I clicked my tongue in annoyance as I grabbed my bowstaff off my back before slamming it onto the deck. Though I ensured the force from the impact spread through the entire ship, otherwise I would have damaged the deck. However, my actions caused the whole ship to tremble intensely. "Do you understand, Vice Captain?" asked Diddy calmly with a feral grin while intensely glaring at Freya as electricity periodically emerged from his body. "Ha, yes, nothing else will be damaged, Captain," replied Freya sarcastically as she glanced at Diddy, who was mere seconds away from pouncing on her, before sighing. Smirking, I retracted my face while also holstering Naga-sa as I stopped myself from beating Freya up, even though it was rather tempting.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.